Let's take a look at some of the front pages this morning, shall we? We'll start with The Guardian, leading with the newly released emails about Trump's alleged links to the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. They say the new claims pile even more pressure on the Trumps. That's The Guardian. Let's take a look at The Mirror. Well, it's drawing the conclusion the emails show that Trump spent hours with the woman at the centre of the abuse claims, Virginia Giuffre. Trump spent hours with Giuffre. That's the claim from the paper there. Let's move on, shall we, to The Times. That number 10 briefing about the threat to the Prime Minister's position, leading the paper there. Reports that Keir Starmer now under pressure from ministers to sack his top aide, Morgan McSweeney, his chief of staff there. The Mail, similar story, saying that allies are worried, though, that ousting him would trigger a general election. The threat to plotters amid fears of coup, the subline there. And let's just talk about The Star, shall we? The musicians Dua Lipa and Chris Martin backing the paper's campaign for a government cap on the soaring cost of ticket prices. And of course, always a pun. Anyway, stick with us. 6:40, we'll have the news review this morning, joined by the broadcaster and tech expert Jules Hardy. Plenty more of that to come in 20 minutes' time. Now then, the head of the British Medical Associations defended a new round of walkouts by resident doctors starting tomorrow, insisting pay is still way down and the government's failed to finish a journey towards restoring it. The Health Secretary has urged the union to call off the strike and accused doctors of acting like a cartel, threatening the future of the NHS. Our health correspondent Ashish Joshi sat down with the BMA chair, Dr. Tom Dolphin.
What was the last conversation you had with the Secretary of State? What is the stumbling block?
The stumbling block is that we feel that the improvements that we've had to pay over the last few years haven't gone to the extent we would like to, because when we started the dispute, resident doctors, remember the lowest level of the resident doctors, they were being paid £14 an hour. And there were some pay rises over the last couple of years that brought that partly back to the value that it should be at, but not all the way. And we wanted to continue that journey. The Secretary of State himself called it a journey, implying there were further steps to come, but we haven't seen that.
So it does come down to money then?
In the sense that the Secretary of State doesn't want to or isn't able to fund the pay increases to match the value that we had in 2008.
Nobody is being paid what they were being paid in 2000.
The general worker in the economy as a whole the pay has caught up compared to 2008. That graph, everyone else has come back up, doctors are still way down.
Why do you continue to use the RPI when everyone says that's not a fair way to measure it? Well, because it suits you, doesn't it?
Even if you did it with CPI, there's still a big gap, a big deficit. But the reason we think RPI is better is because it better reflects the costs that people face.
But nobody else agrees with you. The ONS doesn't agree with you.
When it comes to calculating things like student loan repayments, for example, when it suits the government because it's a bigger figure.
But this suits you because it's a bigger figure.
We think it reflects the costs that our members face in terms of housing includes that CPI doesn't.
29% was more than anyone else got. It was one of the first things the government did was to address the resident doctors and bring an end to 2 years' worth of disputes. Do you accept that?
I think that the gap was biggest for doctors and needed the biggest amount of restoration, and that's what we got.
Rachel Reeves will set out a budget and she'll talk about raising taxes, potentially. That shows you just what sort of economic decline this country is in. Is this the right time to be asking for more money, when clearly there doesn't seem to be any money for the public services that we need so much?
We're not asking for the money right now. We're quite happy for that money to be deferred with some kind of multi-year pay deal so that we can end the dispute and avoid having further industrial action about pay for several years to come. We'd be very happy to do that. We'd be happy to talk about that with the Secretary of State. And the other thing to say is that money spent in the NHS is returned to the economy. Several pounds. For every pound you spend in the NHS, you get several pounds back in terms of value.
But the strikes are an overall expense to the economy. The last round of strikes cost £1.7 billion. Wouldn't you rather see that spent on diagnostic equipment for cancer patients?
I think that the government could be spending that money on settling the pay dispute.
So it shouldn't go to cancer patients, that £1.7 billion, which it's costing the NHS for your strikes.
Who do you think is treating the cancer patients? It's doctors. So if you're spending, you're trying
but that £1.7 billion your strikes have cost could be used as investment in the NHS to treat cancer patients, couldn't it?
So what I'm hearing here is that we could have spent that money in settling the pay dispute.
Your strike action, if it impacts the NHS, could see the end of the Labour government. Would you rather be dealing with Nigel Farage or Kemi Badenoch, for example?
I mean, I've heard this line several times that somehow the BMA is going to be responsible for the Labour government failing and losing office. I don't see how that's really plausible.
The latest YouGov poll shows that the number of people who support you is like 38%. That's much lower than it was at the start of the strike action 2 years ago.
A prolonged industrial dispute makes people annoyed with both sides, and it makes people feel like, why can't you just reach a resolution on this? We feel the same way. We would like to reach a resolution on this. It is, vexing to us that we are still in this dispute. So I understand patients' frustration. I understand their annoyance that strikes are still happening. But if we don't solve these problems, if we don't fix the pay and we don't fix the jobs, those problems are going to build up.
If you're a doctor, you know what happens. The longer somebody waits for treatment, the worse their condition becomes and the more treatment they need. Can you not continue to have negotiations with the government and continue to treat patients and continue to bring that elective waiting list down?
We haven't seen movement from the government in the talks that we've been trying to have. That's the problem.
Okay. Are you happy to let patients suffer while you take strike action then?
I don't want patients to suffer. I want to...
Do you accept they are suffering?
I accept that the strikes cause disruption and it causes delays, and that people whose care can be postponed and do get postponed, of course, that's upsetting for them. I completely get that. And I'm sorry that it's happening.
You're watching Sky News. Still to come, Sky News goes on the front line of anti-illegal migration efforts at the gateway to one of Europe's most perilous routes. A special report to come from Alex Crawford.
Eastern Libya is the new doorway to Europe for people being smuggled from Africa and Asia.
We are close to Greece. You can see it.
We've obtained unprecedented access to the authorities.
Do you feel you're just scratching the surface?
We've been on the raids, out with the Coast Guard,
Absolutely desperate.
and inside the detention centres
How did you cope with that?
to find what's pushing people to Europe and what's driving the authorities here to stop them.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling. War, unrest, revolutions.
It's not his country, it's ours.
They have succeeded for the first time in their country's history in removing a leader from power.
No freedom!
Sky News, the full story first. There was fighting here, but there's clearly now a lull, and they're using it to bring up more ammunition. This is a mass exodus in which Russia is hemorrhaging some of its brightest and its best. According to the local weather channel, there have been more than 2,500 lightning strikes and flash flooding, all on top of this week's lethal tornado. What stays with you most in this job is some of the people you meet. What is your worst fear about what the Russians want to do to the children?
They're just boosting demographics by stealing young people.
Would you like to take the opportunity, Mr. President, on Sky News to invite Barack Obama to come here? Mr. Trump, are you running for president? Can you confirm it?
We're going to take a look, a very serious look.
On that day, we saw your fighters killing women, killing children. Was that a mistake? Did you go too far? You couldn't control your fighters? The full force of the state is being used to crush any protest. Free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
Another alarm. The mood here is jittery and nervous.
We're seeing the world get more and more divided, and it's our job to try to make sense of it all.
Now then, Sky News has been given rare access to a specialist unit tasked with crushing illegal migration out of Libya to Europe. The team works through the night to stop refugees from making the perilous journey across the Mediterranean, often responding at a moment's notice in a constant battle with smuggling gangs. Well, eastern Libya is controlled by a powerful leader and a militia, keen to show they can crack down on smugglers and their cargo. In return, they seek European funding and recognition. Sky's special correspondent Alex Crawford and her team were given exclusive access to a detention centre in Benghazi, where hundreds of migrants are being held.
We've seen inside East Libya's detention centres, which are generally off limits. They're packed with those caught being smuggled to Europe. We talked to the men accused of being people smugglers. And we're with the forces trying to break the international smuggling networks crossing the sea from North Africa. The trade in humans is one of the most lucrative ways of making money in East Libya right now.
A lot of people. A lot of people.
Amongst the shops and cafes, out of sight of our cameras, underground smuggling outfits are plotting to move the most desperate illegally across borders. The law enforcers we're with rely a lot on informants and intelligence.
They've been watching some locations which they believe to be suspicious and full of people who are going to try to cross the water, and we're going to go with them.
They go heavily armed. There's a huge amount of money at stake here and unscrupulous people. They've no idea what they're heading into.
Well, scan the QR code on your screen now to watch Alex's full report. It is well worth your time. Still to come, 20,000 Epstein documents released, providing new insights into the disgraced financier's relationships with Donald Trump, Mida Mandelson and Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor.
Eastern Libya is the new doorway to Europe for people being smuggled from Africa and Asia.
We are close to Greece. You can see it.
We've obtained unprecedented access to the authorities.
Do you feel you're just scratching the surface?
We've been on the raids, out with the Coast Guard,
Absolutely desperate.
and inside the detention centres
How did you cope with that?
to find what's pushing people to Europe and what's driving the authorities here to stop them.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling. War, unrest, revolutions.
It's not his country, it's ours.
They have succeeded for the first time in their country's history in removing a leader from power.
No freedom!
Sky News, the full story first. There was fighting here, but there's clearly now a lull, and they're using it to bring up more ammunition. This is a mass exodus in which Russia is hemorrhaging some of its brightest and its best. According to the local weather channel, there have been more than 2,500 lightning strikes and flash flooding, all on top of this week's lethal tornado. What stays with you most in this job is some of the people you meet. What is your worst fear about what the Russians want to do to the children?
They're just boosting demographics by stealing young people.
Would you like to take the opportunity, Mr. President, on Sky News to invite Barack Obama to come here? Mr. Trump, are you running for president? Can you confirm it?
We're going to take a look, a very serious look.
On that day, we saw your fighters killing women, killing children. Was that a mistake? Did you go too far? You couldn't control your fighters? The full force of the state is being used to crush any protest. Free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
Another alarm. The mood here is jittery and nervous.
We're seeing the world get more and more divided, and it's our job to try to make sense of it all.
Welcome back. This is Mornings on Sky News. These are the headlines this hour. Donald Trump's made his first public appearance since the latest Jeffrey Epstein files were released, but didn't take questions. The White House says an email from the convicted paedophile suggesting the president spent hours with a victim, a part of a smear campaign.
These emails prove absolutely nothing other than the fact that President Trump did nothing wrong.
President Trump signed legislation to end the US government's longest ever shutdown after the House of Representatives passed a bill after 43 days of deadlock. Funding lapse has seen federal workers go without pay and travellers stranded at airports. Sir Keir Starmer will investigate briefings that unleashed a leadership row and has apologised to Wes Streeting for anonymous attacks from Number 10 that he was plotting a coup. There are calls from opposition parties for an investigation into Downing Street's head of communications. It comes as concerns have been raised about the perception of a conflict of interest with a lobbying company he owns a minority stake in. And the head of the British Medical Association's defended a fresh 5-day walkout by resident doctors starting tomorrow, insisting pay is still way down and that the government's failed to finish a journey towards restoring. Let's bring you more on our top story now. Donald Trump's made his first public appearance since the latest Epstein files were released, but didn't take questions on the scandal. The White House claims the newly released emails, which suggest President Trump spent hours with one of the paedophile's victims, are part of attempts to create a false narrative. They were released by the Democrats, and it's piled the pressure back on the White House to release the Epstein files. Let's take a look at some of the correspondence, starting with an email from Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell in 2011. In it, he wrote, "I want you to realise that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump." A victim, whose name's been redacted, spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. I'm 75% there. In an email to author Michael Wolff in 2019, Epstein wrote, "Trump said he asked me to resign, never a member ever. Of course, he knew about the girls, as he asked Ghislaine to stop." And in a separate email, Mr. Wolff emailed Epstein to say, if he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the house, then that gives you valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you, or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him generating a debt. Well, Trump's political opponents say the emails raise questions about Trump and Epstein's relationship and Trump's knowledge of Epstein's crimes. Here's Melanie Stansbury, Democratic member of the House Oversight Committee.
Our leadership here is implicated in the largest sex trafficking scandal in the history, not only of the United States, but potentially in the planet. And so this email, especially the 2011 email from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell, directly references Trump. It directly talks about how he spent time with one of the victims of his sex trafficking crimes at Jeffrey Epstein's house.
Well, Donald Trump's always denied any wrongdoing in relation to Epstein, a sentiment echoed by his press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, who claimed it's a manufactured hoax.
These emails prove absolutely nothing other than the fact that President Trump did nothing wrong. And what President Trump has always said is that he was from Palm Beach, and so was Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was a member at Mar-a-Lago until President Trump kicked him out because Jeffrey Epstein was a pedophile and he was a creep. And this email you refer to with the name of a victim that was unredacted now and has since been reported on in this room, so I will go ahead and say it, Virginia Giuffre. And it was CBS's own reporting, Ouija, that recently wrote that Miss Giuffre maintained, and God rest her soul, that she maintained that there was nothing inappropriate she ever witnessed, that President Trump was always extremely professional and friendly to her. And so I think it's a question worth asking the Democrat Party, and you should all go ask them after this briefing, of why they chose to redact that name of a victim who has already publicly made statements about her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and is unfortunately no longer with us.
Well, survivors have told Sky News they want full justice and for all the documents to be released. Sky's Anna Botting spoke to Lisa Phillips, who survived grooming and abuse by Epstein.
Every information that's released gets closer to finding out a little bit more of the truth. So we have to go through all of this to figure out what's really going on. So I absolutely believe, I mean, it's not easy to hear and it's not easy to connect the dots, but I think it's very important that, you know, they're being released.
How far from the truth are we?
Very far. I think we're very far from the truth, but we're getting closer. I just think there's a lot that's going to be coming out over the next few months.
So what ultimately do you want to see?
Well, we want to see justice. We're not quite sure what that looks like, and maybe just understanding what's really going on.
Well, it's one of several stories discussed on this morning's Cheat Sheet podcast with Sophy and Wilf.
My big question from here is, can he escape the relentlessness of this story that we have seen take other people down? And the big difference I would point out compared to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is that Andrew was just the brother of a king. Trump is the king. And I don't use that word lightly. He doesn't have to face another election. So he is essentially a monarch in that regard from here on out. And by the way, he has the power of pardon. It's open question as to whether he could use it on himself, but don't let's forget his predecessor used it on his son. So in terms of the real question, could it really derail him? I just think he is this Teflon character with an awful lot of power around him.
Well, you know the deal by now. Scan the QR code on the screen and you can listen to today's Cheat Sheet podcast in full or wherever you get your podcasts. 6:36, time for the sport.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
club made a great pitch to me, that they wanted me. They gave me a 4-year contract. All the stops were out. They made me feel really welcome.
We arrived at the airport there in Madrid, and there were 30, 40, 50 journalists, cameras, and we thought, oh, they come for this movie star, you know. Suddenly we see, Jesus Christ, Jimmy, it's for you.
It's always difficult losing a great player. Jimmy, for me, was always a world-class striker. Probably not talked about as much, I don't think, as to some of the other great strikers, but I was fortunate enough to play with him.
We obviously made a very good profit on him. If you just take the business transaction, not the football emotion, the transaction was a good deal because we bought him for 2 and we sold him for £12 million.
In 2 years, got 6 times their money. I was not a big earner at the time.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Now then, coming up after a short break, we're going to discuss the stories making the papers today with the broadcaster and tech expert, Jules Hardy.
Eastern Libya is the new doorway to Europe for people being smuggled from Africa and Asia.
We are close to Greece. You can see it.
We've obtained unprecedented access to the authorities.
Do you feel you're just scratching the surface?
We've been on the raids, out with the Coast Guard,
Absolutely desperate.
and inside the detention centres.
How did you cope with that?
To find what's pushing people to Europe and what's driving the authorities here to stop them.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling. War, unrest, revolutions.
It's not his country, it's ours.
They have succeeded for the first time in their country's history in removing a leader from power.
No freedom!
Sky News, the full story first. There was fighting here, but there's clearly now a lull, and they're using it to bring up more ammunition. This is a mass exodus in which Russia is hemorrhaging some of its brightest and its best. According to the local weather channel, there have been more than 2,500 lightning strikes and flash flooding, all on top of this week's lethal tornado. What stays with you most in this job is some of the people you meet. What is your worst fear about what the Russians want to do to the children?
They're just boosting demographics by stealing young people.
Would you like to take the opportunity, Mr. President, on Sky News to invite Barack Obama to come here? Mr. Trump, are you running for president? Can you confirm it?
We're going to take a look, a very serious look.
On that day, we saw your fighters killing women, killing children. Was that a mistake? Did you go too far? You couldn't control your fighters? The full force of the state is being used to crush any protest. Free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
Another alarm. The mood here is jittery and nervous.
We're seeing the world get more and more divided, and it's our job to try to make sense of it all.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club.
4 more years!
Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
.6:41, let's take a look at what's making the headlines in today's papers and our news review, joined by Jules Hardy, broadcaster, tech expert. Good to have you with us. I always say to everyone, thank you for coming in so early. I feel as I really have to say it to you, because you've just travelled from the US, not exactly for this.
No, not specifically. Yeah, so I was just about sorting out my jet lag until last night, where I didn't at all. So there we go.
So we asked you to wake up at kind of 3:45 in the morning or something.
Yeah, so we'll see how it goes.
What's jumped out at you?
Oh, well, where do you want to start? There's so many stories today. I mean, I suppose, like, the biggest ones, obviously, is Epstein with the 20,000 documents, and there are still obviously more documents to come. I presume why they released it was obviously because they want to prove the lie that, you know, Trump didn't know anything about the girls. And then actually the White House said a particular statement, which was actually, if you go through them, it sort of proves that Trump didn't have any relations with the girls, which is actually factually correct. But it's just this never-ending thing of all these horrible stuff that's going on. I mean, I don't know, it's Trump. You wouldn't be really like that surprised if it was true, you know.
Yeah, and it's this interesting thing as well, isn't it? The Democrats released, I think, these 3 key emails.
Yeah.
And then the Republicans then went and released 23,000 documents.
Yeah.
To try and kind of dilute and try and effectively say, look, you're cherry-picking elements here. This is everything in totality.
Yeah.
And now there's lots of these documents, because about 3,000 or so documents and kind of all the pages released alongside them. Like, lots of context that's missing. And that's challenging in a case like this, because context is key, right?
I mean, absolutely.
And the details are key.
But it's just staggering, the amount of evidence and the amount of emails and the amount of information that there are. And obviously over the subsequent days, with all of these things being released, you know, newsrooms around the world are going to be picking through and creating and finding stories within those documents. But it's kind of staggering how cavalier they were in their correspondence as well. And the spelling mistakes. Sorry, I know that's not about that, but, like, they were so just cavalier about it and just said whatever they liked via email. There's, like, a full trace, you know, like, why...
I guess, you know, some of the allegations, the accusations, the crimes, indicative of the fact just cavalier as individuals, right? In the way that they, if they're prepared to kind of treat some of these key people, and obviously Trump is not, none of these allegations at his door, but you know, people like Epstein, if he's prepared to treat individuals in the way that he did, then what's an email? Right.
I mean, OK, so I have a theory. Obviously, this is not based on any actual fact, but, like, if you were Epstein, right, you would know that as soon as anyone was, like, pulled in by police or authorities, whatever, you would be the first to be thrown under the bus. There has to be more information somewhere. I mean, I would hypothesise that there are videos. Like, there has to be something big like that stopped him from being, you know, outed, like, frequently. Because it's just the scale of it. Like, how would you get away with that for so long?
And this is just actually a thought here. Lots of people always try and kind of cover their digital tracks.
Yeah.
But the authorities have an awful lot of capability to actually find wiped files, deleted files, all that kind of content, don't they? There's incredible amount of tech that they can utilise if they were to find a server to kind of dig through the digital footprint of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's kind of like trackers kind of put on all of these things, and even just very, very simply with even just like a hard drive you would have at home. When you delete something, it's not actually deleted. It's only ever deleted until you overwrite it. So just like simple things like that. But like, I mean, I just can't believe that they don't know and they can't find this information out. It's just, it's baffling. Normally in these cases, it's always like hearsay, you know, the woman's word, and then they don't believe them, or, you know, a man's word and they don't believe them. But there's just so much evidence to kind of go through. It's like, I can't, I mean, I do understand why it's happening, but it's also quite like, how has it gotten to this point where I mean, really, you could just believe the women, and then none of this would be in any way relevant at all. You just believe the women and that would be that, but...
And it was interesting, last week or the week before, I interviewed Virginia Giuffre's brother and sister-in-law, and they were saying, you know, this was off the back of Andrew losing his titles and moving to Sandringham, and they said, look, just the number of more victims that get in contact every time these stories come into the press. And you know, they were criticising some of the US politicians who said, look, only 20, that was the turn of phrase, only 20 victims came onto the steps of Congress. And they were like, it shouldn't be any.
Yeah.
But one's too many.
One
you know, and then they talk about just kind of the huge numbers of people that get in touch with them is shocking. It's a story also, isn't it, I think, that's covered in the Mail as well, pages 6 and 7 of the Mail. It kind of, again,
but
references.
But also look at Virginia's story, like... Look what happened to her life. I mean, you'd probably maybe even be more not terribly keen to come forward. I mean, it absolutely ruined her life doing so. I mean, obviously the impact was great, and there were some good things that obviously came out at the end of it. You know, that Andrew, formerly known as Prince. But yeah, you know, I mean, you'd be terrified. It's a terrifying thing to do anyway when it's not people who have like the levers of power in their hands.
Yeah, and she's no longer here to tell that story either, which is the massive tragedy of all of this. Let's move on, shall we, to the Eye, I think, page 12. Well, again, kind of the story continues in the Eye. Epstein email suggests picture of Jeffrey with Andrew was genuine. Then Trump spent hours at Finance's home and knew about the girls. You know, it goes across multiple papers.
I mean, at the very base least, he's complicit because how would you not know what was going on? There's no way you wouldn't know what was going on, and in which case then you could see what was going on and you did nothing about it. And that makes you complicit at the very, very base level. You know, you just let these things happen to these.
He's always denied any wrongdoing, denied even recollecting meeting Virginia Giuffre. But I spoke to Gloria Allred, the very famous US lawyer, who said, look, even if you don't remember anything, go and have the conversation, because the way that lawmakers and police, etc., can analyse this is maybe different to the way that kind of members of the public do. So even if you say you don't remember anything, the conversations are there to be had if you so wish. But of course he has made all those denials. So we're at that point in that story. Where are we? Let's find The Guardian. This is a gear change. This is a gear change. This is page 9 of The Guardian. It kind of... Oh, actually, this isn't the story I thought it was going to be. There is a gear change coming along. Actually, this is really quite serious. Deaths linked to antibiotic resistance increased by 17%.
But I thought, because I feel like I haven't had antibiotics in a super long time. Every time I go to the GP, there was that huge kind of thing where they were like, right, we're going to stop giving people antibiotics because there's a problem. But what it says in there was some of it is potentially linked to private prescriptions. Is that sort of potentially one of the reasons why there's been an increase of something like 17%?
17% increase, and a 22% private prescriptions of antibiotics, 22% of antibiotics are dispensed through the private sector. And there's a bit of a loophole, isn't it? Because you can go onto online pharmacies, some of which are registered, not necessarily in the UK, but registered in European countries, who can kind of sign stuff off.
Yeah, I've known several friends who would have, obviously, an NHS doctor and then a private doctor, and then if they just wanted antibiotics, they would just go to the private one, which sort of defeats the whole point, because it's a problem for everybody then, fundamentally, not just yourself. I mean, no one likes being ill, but take some vitamin D. Rest up.
Yeah, have a sleep. Although you and I can't talk about having a sleep based on the fact we've had barely any before this show. And also I did a story years ago about the pig sector.
So wait, where you...
Bear with me with this.
I'm sticking with
because they use colistin, which is the antibiotic of last resort, which is also used in humans.
Yeah.
And there are concerns that increased use in the agricultural sector might increase the antibiotic resistance just in nature in general, and therefore have implications for humans. And so, it's across the board as humans that we kind of need to think about how we go about using very vital tools.
Yeah.
Because
it's such a short-term gain for such longer. I mean, there's plenty of things we could talk about in the news that are sort of short-term gain with lots of long-term ramifications. We could be here all day, but yeah, it does feel a little bit selfish to do that, because obviously the impact is for everybody.
Yeah, let's talk. Actually, we're talking about health. Let's talk about Health Secretary.
Oh God, Wes. Oh, yeah, so I feel like I woke up and it's this school playground kind of story. Obviously, there's, battles going on in terms of Keir Starmer. Obviously, they're insinuating that Wears Streeting was, coming for him, basically, and then he's come back and said no, and had this brilliant quote about, I'm a faithful, which was pretty smart, really, because that's what all the papers have latched onto, and it sort of humanises politicians when they have watched a television programme somehow. But it's, I don't know, you know what I was thinking, right, when you go to the Tower of London or something, you can go to the gift shop. Stick with me.
Right,
We're talking about pigs. Let me talk about my thing. When you go to the gift shop and you buy a ruler and it has all of the kings and queens, because you can't remember, because there's been so many. They need to start doing that for prime ministers, because I'm getting lost now every time they keep changing. How many in how many years? It's
Well, there was 5 Conservatives in 14 years, and then now 6 in 15 years.
Honestly, it's ridiculous, and it's. I think everyone's incredibly tired. Everyone's having issues with money and stuff like that, and I think we just want our politicians to just get to work and start fixing some of the problems. And all of this infighting, it's never ending, and it just goes to show that it's the same in Labour as it was in Conservative. We're just going round and round in circles, and nothing's getting solved. I mean, all they're doing is making Green look super, super appealing.
And their figures have increased. They've kind of gone from 7% to around 15%. There's that kind of Reform at 28 roughly, and then the best of the rest all kind of hovering 19, 15, 16.
The Mamdani effect as well, I think, though. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can win if you actually have some policies and stick to them, or you believe in something, I guess, I don't know.
And this is the challenge kind of you could lay at Reform's door, because they say, look, all this infighting and politics that goes on, well, Kent County Council, which is run by Reform, has also had issues, you know, with infighting and challenges there. I also just want to go back to the museum shop.
Oh, right, yeah. What do we do? What do you want? I can hook you up.
Just because, like, when was the last time we ever saw one of those large pencils? They are the preserve, aren't they? You know, those pencils are about this big. They kind of look like a sword.
For this desk, I really feel like if you were writing the news with a giant... I'm going to get you
You never see them anywhere.
Christmas. It's going to be... That's a news pencil, if ever there was a pencil.
Liv, this is an editor's suggestion. We'll brand it for the morning. It's kind of branding as well. But you only see them. And, like, rubbers the size of, like, household items as well. You only see these in, like...
shop. Like, art museums and, and museum gift shops are some of the best. The weirdest stuff that you'd never find anywhere else.
You go on a school trip and then take it back and be like, I brought you this gift. And your family would be like, I didn't want this.
Like, why do I need 8 rubbers that are shaped like crowns? Like, come on, guys. No.
This is the weird gear change. And there's 2 weird gear changes coming now. This weird gear change I thought was coming, but is now. Criminals will weed streets to save money on pesticides. Now, you have to say...
So, myself and actually one of your team read this morning and misread it as in weed, as in like a verb.
Kind of we apostrophe D.
Yeah, to like we on... We were like, what is this story? What's
this is, you talked about the Greens, this is the Greens. This is in Bristol. They control the council and they want to reduce the amount of glyphosate, which is a very powerful weed killer. So they're going to use, criminals will be used, given community sentences to manually remove weeds on adopted highways and key locations, part of a wider weed management policy adopted by the council.
It's very hard to read this story without it sounding like lots of things in different ways. Weed policy.
It is a weed policy. But it's important stuff because, again, you know, we only have so much resources. And if we go and rampantly spray chemicals around everywhere, then after a while those resources and this weird little blob of rock that we live on in some miraculous miracle that it's all come together, then starts kind of crumbling away. So why not?
I mean, anything where there's less chemicals and you can do things in a kind of... I mean, you know, what other community service will they do? I think it's a great idea. Why not? Like...
I mean, if it makes the place tidier and keeps...
Improve of their weed policy.
Improve of their weed policy, yeah. Also, yeah, which questions. Times, page 20, safely.
Oh, wait, was this the final one? You want to go to this one, yes? I
don't know if we checked editorially whether this passes muster.
It's in a newspaper, so technically it's fine. So there's a new Channel 4 documentary about Hitler's DNA. Like, they found some of his blood from the sofa. And so they've done, like, some genetic testing to kind of find out, you know, what was kind of like going on. And what they've realised, which is that he had Kalman syndrome, which is basically, it sort of stops your sexual organs like properly developing. Right. Obviously, then they're highlighting as well that, you know, it's not necessarily specifically because of this, you know, you don't have this thing and then that makes you Hitler. But it was just a sort of interesting look. But one of the other things was, you remember there was that rumour that he had he was part of like Jewish descendant. Like in his history, his like grandfather or something. So actually, it disproves this as well.
Right,
so that's interesting. But I do feel like we had the song, right? It depends what age people listen, but you know the da 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 da. So apparently, that's actually fairly correct
according to this DNA
sample. I mean, the mother part, if you remember that bit, was incorrect. But right, yeah.
Yeah. Tiptoed that.
You did. It was good.
Very fine line. Appreciate you coming in. I was going to ask you about the shutdown, but we've only got 9 seconds.
Oh.
But travel was hard.
It was difficult.
It was difficult.
There we go.
Plenty more to come here on Mornings with Ridge and Frost in a minute's time.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach.
This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, good morning. It is 7 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophie and Wilf, good morning from me as well.
President Trump brings the longest government shutdown in US history to an end, just hours after being named again in newly released emails from the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein.
Prime Minister apologises to Wes Streeting and says he never authorised the back-channel briefing from his number 10 team that the Health Secretary was plotting a coup.
Resident doctors go on strike for 5 days from tomorrow. We'll hear from the head of the union. It's at a time the NHS faces a new flu threat.
And in the next few minutes, we get the final health check on the economy before the Chancellor's budget this month as GDP figures drop.
Plus, double warnings on both nicotine pouches and vapes and the impact they could be having on kids.
Good morning to you. Welcome to the programme. We've got some breaking news crossing just at this moment. GDP figures. Ed Conway, I'm delighted to say, is here with us. Good morning, Ed. What's the data?
They've just landed. It's slightly worse than expected. 0.1% growth in the third quarter of the year. I mean, you know, economists had expected it to be 0.2. This is 0.1. We get a whole raft of data. So, and I'm going to bring that to you over the course of the next few hours. But the main headlines. So, Growth is a bit weaker than expected. Obviously, that's going to be a disappointment for the Chancellor. It's coming just ahead of the budget. We obviously get that big assessment from the Office of Budget Responsibility about how well the economy is doing, so this feeds into the public finance numbers. Monthly growth, and what we're talking about here ultimately, this is just how much money is the economy generating, across every sector? And one of the relevant things here is this period, that quarter that we're talking about, that was when Jaguar Land Rover had its big shutdown because of the cyber attack, and we know that has borne down on the numbers. The question is, the extent to which that plays into it. Like I say, I can bring that to you. But here's what's also interesting. Monthly GDP, so that's the rate at which it was growing in September itself, that contracted. So the economy actually contracted in that period. So they're just monthly numbers, and then we get that quarterly. We'll bring you more data, over the course of the next few hours. But it's a disappointment for the Chancellor, I would say.
It's just this thing again, isn't it, about how they just can't unlock growth. It's just this kind of pancake-like growth for so long, just flat.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been tepid, obviously, for a while. It's marginal if you look at any 1 month or quarter. Yeah. The only other thing, Ed, I was just going to get your view on before you dive into the data for next hour. There's been a bit of good news, not over the last day or two, but over the last 2 or 3 weeks for the Chancellor ahead of the budget, and that's on borrowing costs. But borrowing costs are down quite a lot over the last month or two. And the most important thing to look at in terms of how we judge Rachel Reeves and judge the UK government is spreads over comparable G7 economy. How much more are we having to pay, and is that gap getting wider or thinner? And actually, it's got a bit thinner over that period of time over the last couple of weeks. And most people I speak to would say that's because the market is starting to expect if taxes do have to go up, they'll do one of the economically sensible things. They'll pull one of those big levers, not do this long tail. Whether or not, of course, the population or their MPs think that's worth the political price that comes with breaking a manifesto pledge, it is helping borrowing costs.
Yeah, no, that's totally right. It's been this one thing that I think we've been talking, we've been focusing on for a lot. I mean, we don't normally kind of spend a lot of time showing charts of gilt yields, which is what this is. It's basically the government's cost of borrowing. But part of the reason we've been doing that a lot in the last 3 years is that was the heart of what went wrong after the mini budget. We saw those yields going through the roof. They have come down, and that's definitely will be a kind of reassuring for the Chancellor. But I'll bring you some more charts on that, because I do have charts. Fear not. And that spread is narrowing, so that's a bit of good news. It might be more the Bank of England than what the government is doing, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and also just to underline, if the government is spending less on debt, they've got more money to spend on, schools, hospitals, etc., etc. Right, that's the point. Ed, we'll be having a lot more from you on the programme. Thanks for...
Can't have too many charts.
Yeah, we love an Ed chart, don't we? We really do. President Trump has been named again in newly released emails from the paedophile billionaire Jeffrey Epstein. In one email, Epstein claims the president knew about the girls and even spent hours with one of the alleged victims at Epstein's home.
Around 20,000 pages of emails and documents were released by a congressional committee last night. They put pressure back on the White House to release the Epstein files in full.
So just to take you through some of the details, in one email, Epstein wrote to his associate and the convicted sex trafficker, Ghislaine Maxwell, in 2011, "I want you to realise that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. A victim, whose name has been redacted, spent hours at my house with him. He's never once been mentioned, police chief, etc. I'm 75% there."
In another email to the author Michael Wolff in 2019, Epstein wrote, "Trump said he asked me to resign, never a member ever. Of course, he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop."
And in another, Mr. Wolff wrote to Epstein to say about Trump, "If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to that house, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you, or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him, generating a debt."
Well, separately, last night the president signed a bill to end the US government shutdown. It's the longest shutdown in history at 43 days. That took place in the Oval Office once it had passed the House, passed the Senate earlier in the week. He didn't then take questions from the media after doing that, perhaps not a surprise given the other news. His press secretary, Caroline Levitt, though, had been in front of the media earlier defending her boss in light of that new email cache.
These emails prove absolutely nothing other than the fact that President Trump did nothing wrong. And what President Trump has always said is that he was from Palm Beach, and so was Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was a member at Mar-a-Lago until President Trump kicked him out because Jeffrey Epstein was a pedophile and he was a creep.
Martha, very good morning from here. I guess good evening to you there. Thanks for staying up for us on this. I mean, the big question I have from here is, does this lead to, whether immediately or in time, a split amongst his own base or his own base turning against the president? We'd expect that already on lots of issues from his political opposition. And interesting, Carolyn Levitt there was clearly trying to make this party political, but it's not really.
Yeah, definitely pressure intensifying on the president. And as you say, senior members of his own party are calling for the full release of the Epstein files now. It's rare that you see the president in the Oval Office after 9 p.m. in the evening, but that's exactly where he was tonight. It was supposed to be this big celebratory moment for him, reopening the US government, as you say, after the longest shutdown in history. And he did his best to try and bask in that moment. He was talking about the economy and his estimations being in rude health. He was talking about a new era of affordability. The problem, though, for this president is there was a group of journalists in the corner of that room echoing much of the American public in asking questions about only one issue, and that is the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. It is the saga that is engulfing this White House. It's kind of been drip, drip, drip in terms of political damage to the president. And now we have this tidal wave of new information, thousands upon thousands of documents. And I guess at the heart of it are two key questions, which are what, if anything, did this president know about Jeffrey Epstein's criminality, and when did he know it? But, you know, huge pressure on Donald Trump growing, and it was telling, as you said, that he exited that room without taking questions from journalists. Usually you can't shut Donald Trump up, but he did not want to talk about Jeffrey Epstein.
Martha, thank you very much indeed. Martha Kellner there for us in the States. Now, I should say, of course, President Trump has consistently denied any wrongdoing in relation to Epstein. He's also previously called the allegations a hoax. He's been a bit Teflon so far, hasn't he?
My assumption is he will continue to be so. I mean, I said this on Cheat Sheet earlier today, that there's a big difference between him and Andrew. Andrew is just the brother of a king. President Trump is the king. And you know, I don't use that term lightly, in the fact that he also, yes, he's a politician, but he never has to face another election. And he's got the power of pardon. It's been debated over the last few years. Is that applicable to yourself? It would be embarrassing to try and apply it to yourself, but quite possibly he does have that authority. That reminder, of course, President Biden used it to pardon his son. So in terms of, you're talking about, could this really derail him? I think not. Will it continue, as we know, with the relentlessness of this story with characters over here, will it continue to infuriate him, slow him down, affect him? Quite possibly, but we'll see if it goes beyond that in time.
To the NHS now, because the head of the trade union representing the BMA has said that they don't want people to suffer, but they have to go ahead with the walkouts. This is all about a 5-day walkout starting tomorrow, about pay, another strike for the resident doctors, previously known as junior doctors.
In terms of what the Health Secretary has said, he's urged the union to call off the strike. He's accused doctors of acting like a cartel, threatening the future of the NHS. Well, our health correspondent Ashish Joshi sat down with the BMA chair, Dr. Tom Dolphin.
A prolonged industrial dispute makes people annoyed with both sides, and it makes people feel like, why can't you just reach a resolution on this? We feel the same way. We would like to reach a resolution on this. It is, vexing to us that we are still in this dispute. So I understand patients' frustration. I understand their annoyance that strikes are still happening. But if we don't solve these problems, if we don't fix the pay and we don't fix the jobs, those problems are going to build up.
Well, let's chat to Ashish now, shall we? Another strike, flu season, how difficult is it going to be?
It's going to be incredibly difficult. That answer there from Dr. Tom Dolphin was in relation to how much support do you have from patients at the beginning. If you can cast your mind back to the beginning of the resident doctors' strikes, or the junior doctors as they were known then, they had a great deal of support from the general public. 2 years on, patients missing their appointments, becoming sicker. If you don't get the treatment you need at the time you need it, you become even worse. So the NHS is always playing catch-up. The difference this time is they have a new government they're dealing with. One of the first things Wears Prada did when he became the Health Secretary was deal with the resident doctor strikes, and they came to an end. What Tom Dolphin and the BMA say is that at that time, the negotiations said they would continue with pay restoration. That pay restoration, according to the BMA, has stopped. What Wears Prada will say is they've had the biggest uplift of any public pay worker, employee, 29.8%. He said that is a great deal, record-breaking, inflation-busting, and there is no more money left in government to pay the junior doctors.
I mean, there's another big point about the timing. This is 2 weeks before our taxes go up again. That's also a big difference to 2 or 3 years ago when this started to come out. And again, when the public's looking at that and they know taxes are going up just to maintain services, it doesn't resonate as well.
No, and I asked Dr. Tom Dolphin exactly that. I said, look, Rachel Reeves is likely to put up taxes. There is no more money in the public purse. Where is Wears Prada, even if he wanted to give you the money, where is he going to find that money? If he goes to the Treasury and says, I need to pay my junior doctors because the elective lists are going back up again, he's not going to get any more money. So they are at a stalemate, and it's not looking good for winter season, no.
Now, we've had a lot of political fallout from what happened yesterday. The Prime Minister has apologised to his House Secretary, Wears Prada, over briefings that he was plotting a coup. He condemned completely unacceptable attacks.
The Health Secretary is blaming a toxic culture in Downing Street, and Sky News understands they did speak briefly on this last night. Mari's here with more on that. Mari, it's amazing that 36 hours on from this story beginning, 24 hours on from Sophie's interview with Wears Prada, that this is still rumbling on.
Yeah, it's rumbling on, and it's rumbling on because we haven't had clarity about exactly what has gone on, where the briefings came from, how they managed to get out without the PM's permission. Not everyone finds that a believable line, but also the fact that Wears Prada and the PM did speak last night, but that was 24 hours after the story broke. So there was essentially a 24-hour period in which they didn't seem to communicate. And some people would find that slightly surprising if the PM was as outraged as he's saying he is. And so you have a situation now where Starmer's apologised, but he didn't go into any details when it comes to the briefings. And so they've agreed to talk soon. They didn't discuss Morgan McSweeney, which is the PM's chief of staff. And there's reporting this morning that MPs and cabinet ministers are calling on the PM to sack Morgan McSweeney. They believe that he's behind this kind of briefing war, or was at least very much aware of it. Now, we don't have those confirmed at Sky News, but the difficulty is the PM at the dispatch box yesterday said it was unacceptable. He said they were a united team, to absolute kind of roars of laughter on the opposition benches when he said that. And the PM's official political spokesman was trying to guarantee us that he has full backing of Morgan McSweeney still, and also that all of the briefings in relation to Wears Prada specifically didn't actually come from Number 10. They came from what was called Starmer's allies.
It's extraordinary. I mean, look, I think kind of taking a step back from it all, because look, this is easy to kind of look at this and be like, this is a Westminster bubble, it's the he said, she said, what's going on? But and I'm sure you're the same, my phone has been absolutely blowing up with angry Labour MPs. They feel so frustrated, and that bad blood and that unhappiness and disbelief, frankly, I think it's going to take a long time to rectify.
I think so. I think there's going to need to be a bit of a repair job done. I think that trust in the PM and the PM's team has dropped, even from some who, you know, would potentially normally be more kind of loyal Starmerites, as it were. And I also think there's a frustration amongst Labour MPs that there's a lot of eye-rolling where they feel that actually they've got enough on their plate. Their job is really, really hard. Budget is coming. They're all dreading it. They're dreading May. You know, things aren't looking good. And actually, this is the last thing they needed on top of everything else. And it gives the impression of navel-gazing and, you know, Labour don't want to talk to themselves more than they want to talk to the country.
Well, I mean, if you look just to Mari, thanks very much for that. I mean, the sort of takeaway, Sophie, in terms of whose stock price is up or down, relatively speaking, you know, Streeting's has risen a bit. The Prime Minister's probably slipped a bit.
Yeah, there was one comment by one kind of Westminster watcher who was saying that Keir Starmer's managed to do the impossible, unite the backbenchers behind West Streeting, which I thought was quite apt, actually, because it's not always perhaps the most popular among some of them. But
because he's a bit more centrist.
Yeah, he's seen as centre, exactly, or to the right of the Labour Party, exactly. But yeah, he's definitely come up well on this. An awful lot, of course, we're going to be talking on the programme about the fallout from what happened yesterday, the mood in the Labour Party. Is there a coup going on? If there is, who could be a potential successor? But, of course, Labour are knuckling down and they know that if they are going to have a chance to make this budget land and if they are, of course, going to have a chance to stay onto power, they need to try and focus on delivery as well. And a big part of that delivery is the cost of living. It's huge. Energy bills, of course, a big part of that mix too. So I'm very pleased to say we can speak to the man in charge of that, Ed Miliband, the Energy and Climate Change Secretary. It's great to have you on the programme, Ed. You're in North Wales today.
Good to be with you, Sophie.
Thank you. You're in North Wales today. You're announcing the building of some kind of smaller nuclear reactors, which is interesting because they can go up much more quickly. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, this is a really exciting announcement. About 10 years ago, the last nuclear plant closed at the Wilfred nuclear site. But new nuclear is coming to North Wales. We're announcing today that a fleet of SMRs, small modular reactors, will be built here in North Wales. 3,000 jobs at construction, thousands more in the supply chain. It's happening because this government has chosen investment, public investment over decline. That's what is making this possible. And it goes to the mission of this government, Sophie, which is to change our economy so it provides good jobs for people. And indeed, of course, the great thing is this will provide energy security and help tackle the climate crisis too.
You've annoyed the United States about it, though, haven't you, right, by choosing the British firm Rolls-Royce over the American company they wanted. Are you going to be off Donald Trump's Christmas card list?
Well, look, we maintain good relations with our US allies, including on nuclear. I think what you're pointing to is that the US ambassador was fighting for an American company to take this site, totally understandably, totally legitimately. We chose a British company, Rolls-Royce, that won our small modular reactor competition. We've chosen our prime site for our own sovereign capability. I think that's the right choice for Britain. And, you know, my job is to stand up for the British national interest. The US ambassador's job is to stand up for his national interest.
It's interesting, though, because you're right, I'm talking about the ambassador there, and the Americans do have some, genuine concerns about energy supply in the UK. Wilf, on this programme, interviewed the US ambassador last week, and I just want to read you what he had to say about your policy about new drilling licences in the North Sea. The ambassador said, "I don't think Ed Miliband is necessarily wrong, but I think it's an incorrect policy to ignore your fossil fuel reserves, both in the North Sea and onshore." So he's saying, I'm not saying Ed Miliband's wrong, but he is actually wrong.
Look, I've had a good conversation with the US ambassador about this. Look, they have a different approach on this issue, Sophie.
What was the good conversation? Go on, tell us what happened in it.
Well, no, that would be telling. Look, we will use our North Sea assets. We're going to keep our existing oil and gas fields open for their lifetime. That's really, really important. But for us as a country, the reason we had the cost of living crisis and the reason it continues is that we are subject to the actions of petrostates and dictators which control the fossil fuel markets. And so people remember when Russia invaded Ukraine, prices shot through the roof, bills went through the roof. We don't control that. Our mission is for clean, homegrown power that we control. That's why, for example, our SMR announcement, small modular reactor announcement today is so important. It's about getting us clean power and clean power that we have control over.
You say that we don't have control, but obviously Britain is paying more for electricity, for example, than another country. So there is something going on there. But clearly, I want to talk to you as well about what happened last night as well. So we had this extraordinary briefing yesterday saying there was some kind of plot to oust Keir Starmer. We spoke to Wes Streeting on the programme as well, and he said there was a toxic culture within Downing Street. He said that they'd try to kneecap him. I mean, do you accept the Health Secretary's characterisation of the toxic culture?
Look, I think the briefing has been bad, no question. Look, my message to the Labour Party, though, is quite simple today, which is we need to focus on the country, not ourselves. You know, we were given a historic mandate last July, a historic opportunity to change our country, and we have a historic responsibility. And, you know, I've been at this a long time, as you know, Sophie. Governments go through days of turbulence. I was there during the Blair-Brown years. What gets you through, what sustains you is your sense of mission, your values, what you believe in, who you stand up for. And that is what really, really matters. And I know that Keir will hate all this nonsense, and we're going to focus on the country, and that's what we need to do.
You say it was bad briefing, you say Keir Starmer will hate all this nonsense. Does someone need to lose their job over this? Because someone's briefed it, right?
Well, look, I've talked to Keir before about this kind of briefing that happens, and as he always says, if he finds the person, he'll get rid of them, and I absolutely believe he would do that. The trouble is,
if he finds the person, you think that Keir Starmer will sack them?
Sure, yeah. But you and I know, Sophie, that you probably know more who the briefers are than I do. But, you know, these things do happen, I'm afraid, in politics. I don't minimise them. I hate the culture of briefing, but they're a long-standing aspect of politics. As I say, I was there between when Blair and Brown. There was lots and lots of briefing, as you will recall. Both of them, you know, also wanted to try and kind of control it, stop it. So, look, these things unfortunately happen. But what matters is staying focused on the mission. Turbulence is part of the gig, is part of the DNA of being in government. What gets you through is keeping your eyes on the prize of what you care about, what you're trying to do. I don't want to go on about my announcement today, but I'm very enthusiastic about it. But it does speak to something, which is this country doesn't work for most people. We want to change that, create good jobs, and that's where our focus needs to be.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And you're allowed to talk about your announcement. Don't worry, I get that. I have to say, though, you know, some names have been mentioned as potential successors over the last couple of days. We're Streeting, obviously, Shabana Mahmood, Ed Miliband. Do you fancy doing a Donald Trump coming back for more?
Definitely not.
Is that ruling out then, categorically?
Yeah. I had the greatest inoculation kind of technique for wanting to be leader of the Labour Party by being leader of the Labour Party between 2010 and 2015. No, look, I support Keir. Government is a collective endeavour. Leadership is a collective endeavour. We all have a responsibility to ensure this government succeeds.
I just have one final question for you, because our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, has a story about the Prime Minister's Director of Communications, Tim Allen, and a potential conflict of interest because he owns shares in a lobbying company, Strand Partners, and some opposition politicians are calling for an investigation. Would you like to see that?
Well, look, I've read the story on the way to the studio today. Look, as I understand it, all the proper procedures were gone through in Downing Street. The story I read on Sky said that there was no allegation that either Tom Baldwin or Tim Allen had done anything wrong or against the rules. So I don't think there's a major issue here.
OK, Ed Miliband, thank you very much indeed. Ed Miliband speaking to us there from Wales.
I loved his ruling out there. With a smile and with quite a convincing smile and answer.
Yeah, I think so.
And I think the really interesting thing on the energy announcement is the small modular reactors and nuclear is absolutely a way that can increase our own energy security. And it's also not typically, you know, if you talk about some people saying you want to increase our energy security and are they too obsessed with the green and this and that, it's clearly an example that's not, because it's clean, but it's not perfectly clean and it comes with, you know, long-term issues. So in that sense, I think all corners support nuclear being part of our energy mix going forward, and small modular reactors are an encouraging way. It's quicker than one single big nuclear plant.
The other thing I thought was genuinely quite interesting as well is that he specifically said, he went further than I've heard anyone else say, in saying if Keir Starmer finds out who led that briefing, he will sack them. I mean, he was definitive. I asked him again, and he came back and said that he will do that. I mean, I haven't heard that before. I think that is certainly kind of toughening up at the line. I don't know if it's, you know, something that Keir Starmer agrees with or not, but that's interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. I agree. Now, the new strain of flu that could cause the worst winter season for decades is out and about. We're going to discuss that next, as well as more in and around the junior doctor strike. Don't go down.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club.
4 more years!
Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to Mornings with Ridge and Frost. A reminder of the headlines. The White House has said emails from Jeffrey Epstein alleging that President Trump spent hours with the victim of the paedophile financier are part of a smear campaign by the Democrats.
These emails prove absolutely nothing other than the fact that President Trump did nothing wrong.
The Prime Minister has said he will investigate briefings that led to suggestions a Health Secretary was plotting a leadership coup. Keir Starmer has apologised to West Streeting for what happened, and the Energy Secretary of Miliband told us whoever's responsible should be sacked.
The British Medical Association has defended a 5-day walkout by resident doctors starting tomorrow. The union insists it's been forced to strike because pay is still way down.
I understand patients' frustration. I understand their annoyance that strikes are still happening. But if we don't solve these problems, if we don't fix the pay and don't fix the jobs, those problems are going to build up.
Now, President Trump is facing more questions about what he knew and when about the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein.
Thousands of documents from the Epstein estate have been made public, with one email claiming Mr. Trump spent hours with one of the disgraced financier's victims.
So the White House says the emails have been selectively leaked and are parts of attempts to create a false narrative by the Democrats.
Survivors have told Sky News they want full justice and for all the documents to be released. And Sky's Anna Botting spoke with Lisa Phillips, who survived grooming and abuse by Jeffrey Epstein.
Every information that's released gets closer to finding out a little bit more of the truth. So we have to go through all of this to figure out what's really going on. So I absolutely believe, I mean, it's not easy to hear and it's not easy to connect the dots, but I think it's very important that, you know, they're being released.
How far from the truth are we?
Very far. I think we're very far from the truth, but we're getting closer. I just think there's a lot that's going to be coming out over the next few months.
So what ultimately do you want to see?
Well, we want to see justice. We're not quite sure what that looks like, and maybe just understanding what's really going on.
So it's extraordinary, isn't it? All these emails coming out. Until now, it really feels, doesn't it, that President Trump's been kind of like a bit Teflon over it. Nothing has really stuck. He's kind of denied everything, of course, and said that he's got, you know, nothing to do with it all. But do you think anything might change?
Gosh, who knows exactly? But clearly, he's in an unbelievably powerful position, generally speaking, and also doesn't have to face another election, which I think is worth noting. So whether his political stock rises or falls is less relevant than perhaps it would otherwise be. But I think it's interesting hearing from that survivor there as well, and also saying, you know, wants all the documents to come out. And I'm not quite sure the process as to when the US is releasing what and what more there is to come. And if or when that will come out, but you can certainly understand the desire for everything to be made public, particularly from those survivors.
It's really difficult, isn't it? Because there is obviously, you know, Donald Trump saying it's selective, that it's political, etc. But there is this weird situation where we're getting bits and pieces released at different times by different people, and I would imagine that for the victims of something that is extraordinarily traumatic time of their life. Many of them, I'm sure, very, very damaged and vulnerable still as a result of it. That must be so difficult to cope with as well.
Yeah, and look, it is politicised in the US. There's no doubt about it. That shouldn't be a defence for either side, but it is certainly politicised at the moment. Now, it's that time of the year when we're being warned about the impending flu season this time.
Sorry. Love it. The co-prayers, classic.
That was my error.
He's such a gent, isn't he? Always such a gent. This time, experts are saying it could be the worst one in decades, and it's all down to a new mutated strain of flu that's caused an early surge in cases.
Well, the new strain, H3N2, also known as subclade K, is... Did you know that?
No.
No. Is commonly known to all of us as flu. Currently the most dominant strain in England. The fears over here stem from Australia, which has had the biggest flu season in its history, and it's often seen as an accurate predictor of what the UK can expect.
Now, NHS officials say the flu season has hit more than 1 month earlier than usual,
with cases already 3 times higher than this time last year. Let's speak now to the public health consultant, Esther Mareku, who joins us now. Thanks so much for joining us. Why do we think it has hit earlier this year?
Flu's got the pattern in that depending on what's going on around the world globally, let me put it that way, you can have the cases coming in much earlier than I expected. But UK Health Security Agency generally monitors the data and the cases that are coming up. And therefore, it's something that we expect patterns change year in and year on. But what I would say is that regardless of the fact that it's hit us earlier than expected, we've still got the flu vaccination program that can help us if we all do our bit by making sure that we go on for our flu vaccines.
Are the vaccines available early enough, given that flu has hit earlier than expected, and are people taking it up?
The flu vaccination program started with the GP practices as way back as in September. And for NHS health staff as well, the vaccination program has been ongoing. Some people have taken their vaccines already, but we don't have sufficient numbers to take them on now. So my plea to everybody would be to make sure we go for our flu vaccination, our flu vaccines if we are eligible for that. What data from UK Health Security Agency is telling us that regardless of the fact that we're seeing a new strain this year, the vaccine that we have in the UK is still very effective. And in actual fact, for children and young people, the vaccination program prevents about 70 to 75% of hospital attendances if we take the flu vaccine. And for adults, about 30 to 40%. Now, that is very, very effective. And therefore, that still is the best way forward. And then making sure that we maintain good respiratory hygiene as well.
Historically, 10 years ago, pre-pandemic, what was the take-up, percentage-wise, nationally of the flu vaccine, and where is it now?
Currently, we're around about 40%-ish, I would put it that way. But this is still very early in terms of the flu vaccine program. So there is still a lot of opportunity for us to pick up the vaccines. And I would plea again to everybody. I mean, I've taken my vaccine already as a healthcare professional, and I'll plead with every healthcare professional in particular to say, take your vaccine, because what that does is that, one, we protect our families and friends, and then two, it means that work absences are reduced. We protect our patients who come to us, and we protect our colleagues as well. So it's a way of making sure we're reducing infection in the workplace. And then to the general public as well, my plea again would be, take your vaccine if you're eligible. There are, if you are over 65, you're eligible. And then for others, there are those who may have certain disease conditions and comorbidities and vulnerabilities. And if you are not certain about whether or not you're eligible or not, if you visit your local pharmacy, or you call your local GP practice, they would let you know if you're eligible. And then there's also the children and young people's vaccine that's also available. And for children and young people in particular, most of the time during the flu season, what we observe is that a lot of children, you go into the nurseries and you see all the coughs going on, and it's spread very quickly. But if children and young people take their vaccine, then the prevention of spread of the flu, particularly to family members and other people in the school and to the general public, is massively reduced. So I would again still, I cannot emphasize enough the importance for each and every one of us to take our flu vaccine. It's still very effective, despite the fact that we're seeing a new strain.
Thank you so much, Esther. We're now going to continue the discussion with Dr. Jamie Lopez-Bernal. He's a consultant epidemiologist for immunisation at the UK Health Security Agency. What would you follow up with on that level? Is take-up levels too low? Is this flu season going to be terrible?
Well, I mean, I'd concur with everything that Esther's said. I think we do have some concerns about the flu season that's coming. We have seen a new strain circulating, which has evolved more rapidly than normal. Flu, we see flu change every season, but the evolution of the virus has been more rapid than normal this season, which means that as a population, we have less immunity, and could mean that we have a bigger impact to the season. And we have seen this early start to the season so far. As Esther said, the protection from the vaccine, from what we've seen so far, it's still working very well, in particular among children, but also working well in adults. So it's important that anybody that's in a vulnerable group and at risk of serious disease from flu takes up their vaccine.
Thanks so much for joining us, Jamie. Sorry we didn't get onto you a bit sooner, but thanks very much, Dr. Jamie Lopez-Bernal there.
Now, Sky News has been given rare access to a specialist unit tasked with crashing illegal migration out of Libya to Europe.
The team works through the night to stop refugees from making the perilous journey across the Mediterranean, often responding at a moment's notice in a constant battle with smuggling gangs.
We've seen inside East Libya's detention centres, which are generally off limits. They're packed with those caught being smuggled to Europe. We talked to the men accused of being people smugglers. And we're with the forces trying to break the international smuggling networks crossing the sea from North Africa. The trade in humans is one of the most lucrative ways of making money in East Libya right now.
A lot of people. A lot of people.
Amongst the shops and cafes, out of sight of our cameras, underground smuggling outfits are plotting to move the most desperate illegally across borders. The law enforcers we're with rely a lot on informants and intelligence.
They've been watching some locations which they believe to be suspicious and full of people who are going to try to cross the water, and we're going to go with them.
They go heavily armed. There's a huge amount of money at stake here and unscrupulous people. They've no idea what they're heading into.
Do scan the QR code for more of Alex's amazing report. Of course, we talked about it extensively with her yesterday.
Yeah, we did.
I wanted to get her back again every day. She knows so much.
She's got a bit of journalism to do, sadly.
Yeah, it was such a joy to have her with her yesterday. But both of those packages, the one from yesterday and today, are really worth watching, really exclusive stuff.
Alex's main point as well, talking about, obviously, the migration crisis, something that we feel with the small boats crisis here in the UK at the end of their journey. But her point, I guess, is that the journey starts so much further back and there are many more chances to intervene, to try and help the people, but also to try and stop that migration process happening as well. It's very interesting. Definitely watch her full report.
Still to come, concern around the growing popularity of nicotine pouches, also of vaping tools.
Vaping, all that stuff.
That's when I started to go off script on a sentence and couldn't bring it back. Vaping devices, otherwise known as vapes. We'll be right back.
Eastern Libya is the new doorway to Europe for people being smuggled from Africa and Asia.
We are close to Greece. You can see it.
We've obtained unprecedented access to the authorities.
Do you feel you're just scratching the surface?
We've been on the raids, out with the Coast Guard,
Absolutely desperate.
and inside the detention centres.
How did you cope with that?
To find what's pushing people to Europe and what's driving the authorities here to stop them.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling. War, unrest, revolutions.
It's not his country, it's ours.
They have succeeded for the first time in their country's history in removing a leader from power.
No freedom!
Sky News, the full story first. There was fighting here, but there's clearly now a lull, and they're using it to bring up more ammunition. This is a mass exodus in which Russia is hemorrhaging some of its brightest and its best. According to the local weather channel, there have been more than 2,500 lightning strikes and flash flooding, all on top of this week's lethal tornado. What stays with you most in this job is some of the people you meet. What is your worst fear about what the Russians want to do to the children?
They're just boosting demographics by stealing young people.
Would you like to take the opportunity, Mr. President, on Sky News to invite Barack Obama to come here? Mr. Trump, are you running for president? Can you confirm it?
We're going to take a look, a very serious look.
On that day, we saw your fighters killing women, killing children. Was that a mistake? Did you go too far? You couldn't control your fighters? The full force of the state is being used to crush any protest. Free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in. Another alarm. The mood here is jittery and nervous. We're seeing the world get more and more divided, and it's our job to try to make sense of it all.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin. The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks. If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
We know the warnings about the use of cigarettes and vapes, but now there are concerns around the rise of sales of nicotine pouches.
So if you're wondering what that is, it's basically like, I mean, it's obvious. It's a little pouch containing.
It's not actually that obvious. I had to Google it.
Yeah, it's a little pouch containing nicotine, and you basically put it under your gum. They're easy to access. They're often kept behind the counter in shops. They're packaged in bright colours and advertising and different flavours as well.
Free from tobacco, but packed with nicotine, they're being used more and more by not only adults, but teenagers too.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It certainly is something that I've kind of witnessed as well, more people using them too. Dr. Eve Taylor is a research fellow at University College London. She focuses on addictiveness of non-cigarette tobacco. I'm really interested in this story. So obviously we know cigarettes are bad because of all the additives, because of the nicotine, because of everything. What about these pouches? Are they intrinsically bad for you because they've got nicotine in them, or are they actually much safer?
Thank you for having me on. So with tobacco cigarettes, the main harm comes from them is not from the nicotine actually, although the nicotine is what makes them addictive. It's from all the other toxicants that come when you burn the cigarette. So you've got things like volatile organic compounds, heavy metals, and these products are produced in the combustion of tobacco. So nicotine pouches don't have these kind of toxicants in them. They do have nicotine in them and they are addictive. However, they don't have the other types of toxicants which we know lead to kind of lung cancer, heart conditions. So based on what we see from the toxicology results, they're probably significantly less harmful than smoking. However, there is some potential harm there.
So put on a sort of scale of 1 to 10 for us. Cigarettes are what, and nicotine via other means, specifically via pouches, is how bad?
So if we're doing as a 1 to 10, kind of like compared to cigarettes, I can't give you an exact one for nicotine pouches because the research is so new. They're new onto the market, and we do have some toxicology research there, but not enough for me to quantifiably say. But we do have vapes, and we have looked at vapes quite a lot, and we would say that, you know, based on the toxicology, there's about an 80 to 90% reduction in those products in the exposure to the harmful causing chemicals. And it's probably a similar for nicotine pouches. However, the research is too new to kind of like put a number on it. So I'd say substantially less harmful than smoking cigarettes.
It is genuinely interesting, isn't it? Particularly with, you know, we see it all the time. Vapes are popping up everywhere. Nicotine pouches again have had this rise in popularity. I guess one question I have for you is, we've got loads of research into cigarettes, right, because they've been around for a long time. Is there a risk that actually nicotine pouches and vapes will turn out to be more harmful than we think? This feels like it happens all the time. People say, yeah, it's fine. And it's like diesel engine cars and all this kind of stuff. It's fine, it's much better. And then 10 years down the line, they're like, oh no, we got that wrong. Actually, it's really bad.
So I don't think that's going to happen here. So with vapes, we actually do have loads of research. There was a review out in 2022, and it reviewed over 100 different toxicology studies. So we do have lots of research there to know the different kind of toxicant effects and what people are being exposed to from these products. And then we can extrapolate from that and think about what the long-term health conditions might be. Obviously, we don't have the long-term studies because, you know, vapes have been on the market around 10 years, nicotine pouches have been on the market for about 4 years. So we can't see what these long-term effects are, but we can use what we know about what's inside of them to kind of predict what might be going on. So they are not, they're not risk-free. There are still harms of using these products. There is still some exposure to some toxicants, but it is significantly less than
I mean, the 80 to 90% lower thing was striking to me. So what are the side effects of nicotine?
So nicotine, of course, is addictive, and we don't want anyone to be addicted to these products. It can also cause an increase in heart rate and blood pressure. However, this is normally short term. So if you're kind of smoking, sometimes you feel a bit like your heart rate is increasing. If you use a nicotine pouch, sometimes people feel a little bit dizzy or they feel a little bit sick. However, this is very short term and doesn't last. It won't continue to last once you've stopped using. Once you stop smoking. With nicotine pouches, it does stay in the system for a while. So you can continue to feel a bit sick or feel a bit dizzy after you've taken it out. So I think there's where some young people are kind of starting to feel a bit poorly because they put it in, they feel sick, they take it out, and then they continue to feel dizzy and they continue to feel sick for probably about an hour afterwards.
Yeah, I've witnessed that actually at a football game before with the nicotine pouches, because I think, yeah, the sort of nausea and not feeling unwell, like seeing like a young person do that. I mean, I guess that is part of the issue, isn't it? You know, you're kind of worried about young people who, you know, might not know exactly how much they're taking or all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so that is obviously a problem, and these products shouldn't actually be used by young people. They are currently, there's a bit of a loophole in the regulation. They came around after lots of the age of sale regulations were made. However, they will be captured in the new tobacco and vapes bill. So they won't be able to be sold to under 18s. They won't be kind of packaged in these brightly coloured packaging designs. So we don't know exactly what the government is going to do with packaging, but it's likely that they're going to regulate them so they're not attractive to young people. And they'll also have the possibility to regulate the nicotine concentration and some of the other ingredients as well. So we don't know if that's something they're going to do, but this bill means that they will have the power to do that.
Really interesting. It's great to have like a kind of really adult, grown-up conversation about these things and the kind of the science behind them. So yeah, thanks very much.
Dr. E. Taylor, thank you. Let's talk a little bit about prices for music gigs, because Dua Lipa is the latest star to come out backing a cap on ticket resale prices.
Yeah, she's not the only one. Coldplay and Radiohead have also said that the government should make good on its promise to stop people being scammed or priced out of events by ticket touts.
I have a little bit of scepticism towards this because, you know, there's another way of looking at this, which is that the artists want to capture all of the upside when they sell their tickets in the first place. Maybe that's not their motivation, but they set the price. You know, if I buy a ticket and I want to be able to resell it, whether it's because I can't go or not, that should be my ticket to decide to do. And what I would just say is, I think that there is a way that the artists could solve this problem if they're really genuine about what their issue is, without legislation. I'm not even sure it's a place the government should be legislating what you and I can do with a ticket that we own. And that's to say to the ticket sellers, the big companies that sell the tickets, this is how we want you to do it. And they could spread it out much more so that there isn't this rush where the touts and the companies behind that get in first.
Yeah.
So I actually think there's a sort of way they could solve this problem themselves. And the skeptic would say, do they want to do more of what Oasis did, which is capture all of the price upside that people are willing to pay?
There's two things I'd say on this.
One is you love Dua Lipa.
Yeah, I listen to a lot of Dua Lipa. I do. The first thing is, I think that it is reasonable for artists to want to make money for gigs at a time when they often say the only way they can make money now, because of the streaming services, is through live music. You hear that a lot, particularly from, I mean, not necessarily Dua Lipa, but from up-and-coming bands. They say the only way we make money is through ticket sales, is through gigs. So I think that is quite important to them. And I guess the other thing on touts, you know, and I do know what you mean, like someone should be able to, if you can't make a concert, you should be able to sell it on. But if touts basically gain the market, so they buy up all the tickets and then they sell them at inflated prices, well, the only people going to those gigs are going to be the wealthy, right? Which is not a situation that you necessarily want to be in.
Yeah, but I think that I'm just not sure this is an area where legislation is required to interrupt the market. And these artists could stop this by saying to the companies that sell their tickets, spread it out more, do it differently. And again, I'm not questioning these artists. I love Coldplay, I love Dua Lipa, but you know, if they do that, if they do get rid of touts, it's possible that, like with Oasis, you just charge more directly and more goes into their pocket. So I'm not sure that government legislation is necessarily the cleverest solution.
Reaching for legislation, not always the right thing.
Another quick one, Northern Lights, we mentioned it earlier in the week. They were shining bright again last night as they were on, I've forgotten what day of the week is it now?
It's Thursday.
When was
It's Thursday today. They were around on Tuesday night, stronger Wednesday night. But if you've got any, you've got pictures from last night, send them in. Please send them in. This is what the sky looked like over Whitley Bay on Tuesday night. I mean, that is stunning, absolutely beautiful.
That looks like it's an AI generated. It can't be real.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
does.
It's sort of too perfect, that picture.
Yeah, it does. If you have any perfect pictures or imperfect pictures as well, then email us mornings@sky.uk, or you can contact us on social media as well, @Ridge and Frost.
Do you ever forget what day it is?
All the time. Particularly after me getting up at this time.
Yeah, it is Thursday, guys, and
It
we're
is
going to have
Thursday.
more of the day's top stories for you on the other side of this short break. Don't go anywhere.
I bet.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophy and Wilf, good morning from both of us.
President Trump brings the longest government shutdown in the US to an end, just hours after being named again in newly released emails from paedophile Jeffrey Epstein.
The Prime Minister says sorry to West Streeting and says he never organised the briefing from his number 10 team that the Health Secretary was plotting a coup.
Resident doctors go on strike for 5 days from tomorrow. We hear from the head of the union at a time the NHS faces a new flu threat.
And this morning, we're also going to be joined by the former midwife, Donna Ockenden. She is a powerhouse to discuss failings in maternity care.
Plus, the rags to riches story that won one of literature's most prestigious awards will speak to this year's Booker Prize winner, David Soloy.
Hello, good morning. President Trump has been named again in newly released emails from the paedophile billionaire Jeffrey Epstein. In one email, Epstein claims the president knew about the girls and even spent hours with one of the alleged victims at Epstein's home.
Around 20,000 pages of emails and documents were released by a congressional committee last night, and they put pressure back on the White House to release the Epstein files in full.
So just to look at the details of what was said. In one email, Epstein wrote to his associate, the convicted sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell, in 2011, "I want you to realise that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. A victim whose name has been redacted spent hours at my house with him. He's never once been mentioned, police chief, etc. I'm 75% there."
In another email to the author Michael Wolff in 2019, Epstein wrote, "Trump said he asked me to resign. Never a member ever. Of course, he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop."
And in another one, Mr. Wolff wrote to Epstein to say, again about Trump, if he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the house, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you. Or if it really looks like you could win, you could save him, generating a debt.
Meanwhile, last night, the president signed a bill to end the US government shutdown, a 43-day shutdown, no less, the longest in US history. Unusually for Trump, he didn't take questions from the media after signing the bill, but his press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, had addressed the media earlier relating to that cache of Epstein documents.
These emails prove absolutely nothing other than the fact that President Trump did nothing wrong. And what President Trump has always said is that he was from Palm Beach, and so was Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was a member at Mar-a-Lago until President Trump kicked him out because Jeffrey Epstein was a pedophile and he was a creep.
Well, our US correspondent Martha Kellner has more for us.
Definitely pressure intensifying on the president. And as you say, senior members of his own party are calling for the full release of the Epstein files now. It's rare that you see the president in the Oval Office after 9 p.m. in the evening, but that's exactly where he was tonight. It was supposed to be this big celebratory moment for him, reopening the US government, as you say, after the longest shutdown in history. And he did his best to try and bask in that moment. He was talking about the economy, in his estimation, been in rude health. He was talking about a new era of affordability. The problem, though, for this president is there was a group of journalists in the corner of that room echoing much of the American public in asking questions about only one issue, and that is the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. It is the saga that is engulfing this White House. It's kind of been drip, drip, drip in terms of political damage to the president. And now we have this tidal wave of new information, thousands upon thousands of documents. And I guess at the heart of it are two key questions, which are what, if anything, did this president know about Jeffrey Epstein's criminality, and when did he know it? But, you know, huge pressure on Donald Trump growing, and it was telling, as you said, that he exited that room without taking questions from journalists. Usually you can't shut Donald Trump up, but he did not want to talk about Jeffrey Epstein.
Kellner, there for us in Los Angeles.
Now, the Prime Minister has apologised to, or apologies, I should say before that, we need to say that President Trump has consistently denied any wrongdoing in relation to Epstein and has previously called the allegations a hoax. Important, of course, to give that rebuttal before we move on to UK politics, because the Prime Minister has said sorry to Wes Streeting over accusations that he was plotting a coup, and he said that the briefing was completely unacceptable.
The Prime Minister is investigating who did the briefing against the Health Secretary. Last hour, Ed Miliband said whoever it is should be sacked.
But my message to the Labour Party, though, is quite simple today, which is we need to focus on the country, not ourselves. You know, we were given a historic mandate last July, a historic opportunity to change our country, and we have a historic responsibility. And, you know, I've been at this a long time, as you know, Sophie. Governments go through days of turbulence. I was there during the Blair-Brown years. What gets you through, what sustains you is your sense of mission, your values. what you believe in, who you stand up for. And that is what really, really matters. And I know that Keir will hate all this nonsense, and we're going to focus on the country, and that's what we need to do.
You say it was bad briefing, you say Keir Starmer will hate all this nonsense. Does someone need to lose their job over this? Because someone's briefed it, right?
Well, look, I've talked to Keir before about this kind of briefing that happens, and as he always says, if he finds the person, he'll get rid of them, and I absolutely believe he would do that. The trouble is,
if he finds the person, you think that Keir Starmer will sack them?
Sure, yeah. But you and I know, Sophie, that you probably know more who the briefers are than I do. But, these things do happen, I'm afraid, in politics. I don't minimise them. I hate the culture of briefing, but they're a long-standing aspect of politics. As I say, I was there between when Blair and Brown. There was lots and lots of briefing, as you will recall. Both of them, also wanted to try and kind of control it, stop it.
Well, Mari's joined us to discuss this. Mari, I feel like that interview was a significant kind of ratcheting up, to be honest, of the pressure. He said Keir Starmer will sack the person who did the briefing if he finds them. I mean, that feels quite new.
Yeah, it definitely feels new, and it definitely feels like the government line to take is that they are going to try and look into this, get to the bottom of it, and kind of rip it out root and branch. The difficulty is the amount of times we have, leak inquiries and those sorts of things, and nothing's really found, means that for now the rhetoric is hardening. The question is anyone actually ever going to get sacked?
And also, he's had a real kind of merry-go-round, I'll be honest, of advisors in number 10. Can he really afford just to blame the advisors again and get rid of more people?
Well, this is the other thing. The amount of churn in his top team is already being kind of scrutinised and looked at. And obviously, the more you change your top team again and again, and the more you sack people or people leave, it starts to give an impression that perhaps there's a kind of, let's not say a sinking ship, that's perhaps too strong, but there's perhaps a kind of dysfunctionality. And that's not helpful, especially if you lose someone like Morgan McSweeney, which would be absolutely huge. Not that anyone's suggesting that. We know that there are reports that people want him to sack him, but without any confirmation, without the PM fully behind it.
What I'm interested in is the other part of Edmund Ban saying that we probably know who did the briefing better than he did. I mean, obviously it has been briefed to the press according to sources. And therefore, I don't know if I can really ask this question, Mari, without you revealing source. But generally speaking, do people think it was Morgan McSweeney, or we really have no idea it was someone in number 10?
Well, there are different theories behind this. So, yes, there are some people who genuinely think it is Morgan McSweeney. Others feel that it was not Morgan McSweeney, but it was somebody, perhaps Morgan McSweeney adjacent, and Morgan McSweeney was aware to the point where some would say he should have therefore stopped it. And that's what's causing some of the tension. But genuinely, everybody has different theories. Unless you were one of the journalists who was briefed, face to face, it's quite difficult to ascertain. And obviously Beth Rigby was, but obviously she's never going to reveal those sources.
Nor should.
Yeah, this is the thing. There's actually a genuine point here where, I mean, as a viewer, you might be sitting there thinking, what is going on? What you should tell us. We're having this whole storm. But there is genuinely quite an important journalistic principle where you don't reveal your sources, and actually it is kind of fundamental to all of us when we come into this profession.
Totally.
As well.
I mean, the amount of stuff we get online about reveal your sources, name the MP, and I think it's important for people to understand the kinds of stories that have really changed the country have only come out because journalists have protected their sources. Look at Partygate. Look at some of the stuff that the public have learned because journalists have
and also not
sources.
just political journalists as well. Journalists have gone to court. They've said the police have asked them, and it is a really, really important fundamental principle in democracy that we kind of stand by. Just to get off my soapbox.
Of course.
It's kind of it feels important context in this in this debate. Mari, thank you so much.
Now, the economy next. The latest figures on GDP came out this morning. Growth was a bit slower than expected. Ed Conway is here for us with all of the key bits of data. Ed, good morning again.
Do you want me to? Shall I just whiz through the charts really quickly?
Don't whiz.
No, because I know you requested something on gilt yields. And therefore, we need to get through this stuff so we can get to your chart.
Yeah, well, that's...
I'm conscious of
We're
that,
on the same page, then.
I'm conscious. OK. Well, so listen, most important stuff is the fact, apart from Wolf's charts, is the fact that the economy, we just got the latest numbers on how well the economy is doing. That's growth, you know, that is how much income is being generated, how well off people are feeling. And here's the number, here's the one to focus on. I'll kind of squeeze out the way there. That's the latest data, Q3, and it's only 0.1%. It's a little bit weaker than expected, basically, so 0.1% there. But here's what's interesting. So that's looking at the total amount of gross domestic product, which is just, you know, how much income we're generating across the economy. But what you really want to do to get a sense of, you know, how well off we're all feeling is to take these numbers and to convert them into GDP by head. And that gives you a sense of just how much money, extra money we're generating across the entire economy divided by head of the population. And do that, and look at the bars, look at how they're all a little bit low. And you'd expect that because obviously the population's growing, particularly with what's happened to immigration recently. And actually the number is 0. So GDP per head in the latest quarter is 0%, is flatlining. And in both cases, whether it's the headline GDP or whether it's GDP per head, that is the weakest number since Labour came into office. So, you know, coming ahead of the budget, this is going to be a disappointment, I think, to Rachel Reeves. Worth just saying, you know, one of the big factors behind this, if you're going to strip away what's going on, the big picture, that's the big picture. What are the different parts of the economy and how well they were doing? We've all seen the stories about Jaguar Land Rover and the fact that they've had to kind of down tools due to that cyber attack. How much of an impact has that had on the motor industry? Now, this chart, all this is showing you is the car industry and car manufacturing, and it goes all the way back to the 1990s. Now, I want to pull this out, even though it looks kind of almost like a heartbeat here. And you see, the most obvious thing you can see there is that's COVID. So that's basically factories shutting down during the lockdown and then kind of coming back on operation. But here's what's interesting, OK? So aside from COVID, this fall in September of 28.6%, that is, I think, the biggest fall that we've seen for the car industry in a single month. So this was massive in terms of the impact, and then that has fed into wider GDP. So that's the car industry. How does the UK compare elsewhere around the world? You're always hearing this, aren't you, from politicians about how we are world-leading or indeed not. Well, here is our GDP in Q3 compared with France and Canada and indeed Germany and Italy. And where are we? Well, we're kind of in the middle of a not particularly distinguished pack. We've yet to get the numbers from the US. Questions, Mark, as to whether we actually get them due to the shutdown. But finally, last but not least, Wolf asked about gilt yields, and I think it's worth just looking at the chart on gilt yields and to ask the question of whether they come down. This, of course, is the government's borrowing rate and just how much we are being charged as a nation to borrow out there. This is going back to 2021. I've taken the 30-year gilt yield, and indeed, that has started to come down. OK, so that has come down in the last kind of 3-4 weeks. But also, actually, if you compare the UK, and you know, the higher this is, the more we're all having to pay for our borrowing. If you compare the UK to other countries around the G7, the gap there, which, remember, you know, back before the mini-budget, we were kind of middle of the pack. We were kind of, you know, when people were deciding whether they were going to lend money to us, they were kind of charging us a similar rate, or at least a medium rate compared with the rest of the G7. In recent years, we've kind of gone up. And I think that's the concern for Rachel Reeves, is that is narrowing and that she'll be kind of reassured by that. But we're still above the rest of the G7. So Wilf was right. They have come down with some caveats.
The trend, I mean, on borrowing costs obviously is bad over the course of the last year. Over the course of the last week or two, it's less bad, despite things like... Do you know what the worst... We sadly don't have time to dwell on lots of that. The worst thing about those charts is how much of an effect on our overall car manufacturing just one company's shutdown had. It just shows how little car manufacturing we have now.
Yeah, it's totally...
One company, and it falls that much.
28%,
amazing chart.
It's crazy.
Ed, great stuff as always. Thank you very much.
Now, the head of the trade union representing resident doctors, the BMA, has said they don't want people to suffer, but they have to go ahead with the planned walkout. So the 5-day strike starts tomorrow. It's over pay. They say the money they get is still way down compared to what it was in 2008.
Well, the Health Secretary has urged the union to call off the strike and accused doctors of acting like a cartel, threatening
the future of the NHS. Our health correspondent, Ashish Joshi, sat down with the BMA chair, Dr. Tom Dolphin.
A prolonged industrial dispute makes people annoyed with both sides, and it makes people feel like, why can't you just reach a resolution on this? We feel the same way. We would like to reach a resolution on this. It is, vexing to us that we are still in this dispute. So I understand patients' frustration. I understand their annoyance that strikes are still happening. But if we don't solve these problems, if we don't fix the pay and we don't fix the jobs, those problems are going to build up.
Ashish joins us now. I'm interested to know where you think public opinion is at on this, because these have been going on, it should be said, for a long time under the previous government as well as the current government. Do you think the public are still with the resident doctors?
No, I don't. And I think the BMA and Tom Dolphin, I asked Dr. Dolphin the same question. They accept that the public mood has changed. Over the last 2 years, at the beginning of the industrial action, resident doctors unprecedented walkout. We hadn't seen doctors going out on strike for over 100 years, I think. And at the time, it was widely accepted that the public supported the junior doctors. They thought they were being underpaid, the resident doctors, as they're now known, and great deal of public sympathy for their cause. Now, you will find that the latest opinion polls show that there is not that amount of support. In fact, it's at around 30%. So they know they've lost the goodwill from the public, but nevertheless, they are determined to carry on with the industrial action. And just coming back to your lead into what Dr. Dolphin said, he regrets that patients will suffer, but accepts that patients will suffer. I think that's a very important point to make. Everyone knows that these strikes will be hugely disruptive, won't help the NHS, and the elective list that Labour is pinning so much on will start to grow again.
Just quickly, what is the exact amount they're asking for this
26% this time.
26%?
Yeah.
It's not a small amount.
No, it's not. And they've had 29%, but they're not in the room to answer your questions, Wilf, so I feel I ought to. What they will say is that this is going back over 20 years. They want pay restoration. They don't want a pay rise. They want their pay brought into the same pay scale as other workers. And they said that they were promised that when the health secretary sat down with them, when he became the health secretary, West Streeting said, this is a journey. Those were his words. He says that journey has now stalled as far as the BMA is
By the way,
concerned.
you look back at the data to 2010, and I think that's often when they use the marker of how much in real terms they've lost. Absolutely, that is accurate, and I totally get that. And doctors have to go through very expensive, very long training, and I totally get that. Yeah. But it's timing as well, and the comms of all this, just ahead of the budget, when people aren't going to get pay rises, when taxes are going to go up, 26% doesn't come across well.
And also, and as you say, exactly, this is it as well, nobody disputes the impact it's going to have on patients, with flu going up, with, winter season, as you say, and all that entails, people getting sicker, and the NHS already under pressure.
The NHS will tell you that they will cope, but I'll tell you, behind the scenes, they will be under so much pressure. They have to say, if you have an emergency, come to hospital. But everything, when there's a strike, everything grinds to a halt. Only the front door, the emergency department is open. And they will continue with really important care, like maternity care and cancer care. But otherwise, everything else grinds to a halt.
Yeah, that's the reality. Ashish, thank you very much indeed.
Now, this is exciting. Every single person on our team, apart from us. Fictional fashion's biggest stars, Miranda Priestley and Andy Sachs, are back.
Meryl Streep and Anne Hathaway are going back to their roles in The Devil Wears Prada 2, and we just had the new trailer.
Miranda? Took you long enough.
And I have to say, after the chat in the office this morning, I'm going to go back and watch the original, maybe then to watch it. I never saw the first one, but I mean, I knew it was a seminal movie that a lot of people liked, but it's clearly creating a lot of excitement.
Yeah, our team are very, very excited by this. Now, from the screen to the page now, I want to talk about the Booker Prize winner, because this is an interview I have to say I am very, very excited about and really looking forward to. David Solei's book Flesh tells the story of a young man's rise from a Hungarian housing estate into the life of London's super rich. This is the moment he took home the prize.
The winner of the 2025 Booker Prize is Flesh.
Story of a Hungarian young man who moves to London after serving in Iraq. And a handshake from Roddy Doyle, time to accept his trophy from Samantha Harvey, last year's winner, and a hug.
And now we're thrilled to speak to the man himself, David Slade. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
It feels like there's been a real kind of excitement around your book. I think it's fair to say, not least with the Booker Prize, but a lot of people, in my actual life, like normal people, right, talking to me. Have you read this? This is really great.
It's great.
Talk to us what it's all about.
The book itself? Well, the book is, as you said briefly, it's basically the story of a man's life from sort of adolescence to late middle age, I guess you'd say. And this is a Hungarian man who the story starts in provincial Hungary. And his life takes all kinds of twists and turns. He becomes a soldier. He serves in the Iraq War of 2003. But he ends up in London, working as a sort of bouncer and a chauffeur and bodyguard, and that sort of gives him an in with some very rich people, and he gets more and more involved in their lives and becomes rich himself, and then the story sort of goes from there. Yeah.
It's interesting because the lead character is the prose is very sparse. It feels like the lead character starts off as being kind of unknowable. And I thought it was really interesting to read what you said about Adolescence, the TV programme, because you said it was excellent, but it would have been even better if it had dealt less self-consciously with this debate. It was almost too clear a sense of what it was about. And I find that really interesting. I guess that's the difference between TV and a book, where the reader has to do a bit more of the work, and you pose the kind of questions rather than the answers.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the kind of luxuries that a novel has, is that it can be a bit more unresolved. It can leave questions a bit more open, maybe than film and TV can often. It can sort of get a bit more into the deeper complexities of life. There's just more space, I guess, in a novel to go into things.
And it kind of feels like it's the reader as well, like it's almost like a joint project between
I hope so, yeah. I mean, well, the book consists of 10 chapters, which each only cover a few weeks or months of the character's life. And so between the chapters, you have gaps, which are many years long, usually. So the reader has to sort of imagine what has happened. And I think it's usually fairly obvious what has happened. But yeah, the reader does have to do some of the sort of imagining to fill those gaps.
Are you worried about the decline in reading that we've seen? Because sometimes I think we've got a kind of polarised society. And I think, maybe reading is such a great thing where it puts you in the head of someone else almost. It kind of teaches you empathy.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think, yes, I mean, I understand the concern, but I think there are some sort of hopeful signs. I mean, I had the kind of great privilege a couple of months ago to be a guest on Dua Lipa's book club, for instance. She has this fantastic
Don't make
book
her
club.
jealous.
I know. It's like Booker Prize, Dua Lipa, it's like too much. I can't deal with it.
But I only bring it up as a sign of, I mean, Dua Lipa she is young, and her fans are probably even younger.
Yeah.
So it's a sign that the young people still are passionate about reading, and that there is a sense, I think, maybe even a growing sense, who knows, that reading is, they value reading, they understand what's so great about it, and so I'm not too pessimistic, actually.
What does winning this prize mean to you, compared to the sort of broader aspect of writing a book that's been read so widely and getting read so widely and being well received? Do these types of awards add a lot to that or not?
Well, I mean, the award, I guess the biggest prize of all that an award like the Booker offers is a bigger readership. I mean, it's that the book will, I hope, and normally is in this case with the Booker winner, read by far more people than it would be before. My book was already doing pretty well before that, but this will probably take it to another level, I hope, and it will be read by more people. And obviously, that's ultimately what you want. That's the great thing.
It feels like it touches on themes of very political themes that we kind of talk about a lot on this programme, like masculinity and what all of that entails, the debate of immigration as well. And do you see it as like a political book in that sense?
Well, you're absolutely right that it does sort of touch on those things. But I didn't intend the book to be a sort of contribution to a debate in that sense. I think that what the book can do, what any book can do, is to sort of go beyond the you know, if you're having a debate about something, ultimately that has to be in quite simple and sort of general terms, because but what a book can do is bring that down to sort of the absolute granular, concrete reality of individual lives. And what's exciting is then you see these political debate terms or ideas or you know, contentions in the context of concrete reality, which is obviously where they originate. That is what we live in. Yeah. So maybe the book can then talk and think about these things in slightly more nuanced and subtle terms.
Thank you so much. It's been great to have you on the programme.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Congratulations again.
Thank you.
On the victory. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, what did Donald Trump know and when? The questions in and around that big cache of Epstein documents that were released yesterday.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to Ridge & Frost. Lots of news for you this morning. The UK's economic slowdown continued during the third quarter of the year with growth of just 0.1%. Bad news for the Chancellor. He needs to get the economy moving ahead of the budget.
The White House has said emails from Jeffrey Epstein alleging that President Trump spent hours with the victim of the paedophile financier are part of a smear campaign by the Democrats.
These emails prove absolutely nothing other than the fact that President Trump did nothing wrong.
The Prime Minister has said he will investigate briefings that led to suggestions the Health Secretary was plotting a leadership coup. Keir Starmer said sorry to Wes Streeting, and the Energy Secretary Ed Miliband told us whoever is responsible will be sacked.
I've talked to Keir before about this kind of briefing that happens, and as he always says, if he finds the person, he'll get rid of them, and I absolutely believe he would do that.
The British Medical Association has defended a 5-day walkout by resident doctors starting tomorrow. The union insists it's been forced to strike because pay is still way down.
I understand patients' frustration. I understand their annoyance that strikes are still happening. If we don't solve these problems, if we don't fix the pay and don't fix the jobs, those problems are going to build up.
Now, as a huge tranche of emails from Jeffrey Epstein were released last night, a big question has been, will this bring down Donald Trump? Association with Epstein, a convicted paedophile, has, of course, ended the careers of Peter Mandelson and stripped Andrew Mount Van Windsor of his royal title. So what does this latest release and its revelations about his relationship with Epstein mean for President Trump? Well, Katie Balls is joining us now from Washington, the US editor of the Times and the Sunday Times. Katie, thank you so much for staying up for us. Hugely, hugely appreciated. Great to have your perspective on this. Firstly, what jumps out to you as what is in this latest set of release of documents as it relates to President Trump?
So I think the top lines in terms of what is in this tranche documents about Trump were initially, the choreography is quite important here. So you had a situation in the morning of Wednesday in the US, whereby the Democrats on the Oversight Committee, which has been looking at all the Epstein files, the Epstein's case, started to release very select information suggesting from the emails that Donald Trump had spent time with a victim of Epstein, spent several hours. This then led to a furious response from the White House that said, fake news, Democrats pushing a certain agenda. And in turn, the Republicans on the committee released 20,000 files, which obviously everyone here in DC and beyond then had to spend hours sifting through. In terms of what is in those, you have, as I said, the suggestion of Trump spending hours with a victim. You also have Epstein writing that Trump knew of sexual abuse but didn't participate. These are just some of the allegations in it. And then Epstein having conversations with Ghislaine Maxwell, almost saying, this is a dog that didn't bark. Isn't it interesting that Trump hasn't been named in these various documents? In that 20,000 documents that have been released, you also have other names coming up. Hence, the papers today also have stories about Andrew, formerly Prince Andrew, and then also Peter Mandelson and others.
In terms of President Trump himself, how weak a position is he in? I mean, I use that word because clearly he's incredibly powerful. Is this going to derail him?
I think it derails him just in the sense immediately. So this is something he doesn't want to be talking about. The White House do not really want the Epstein situation to be dominating the news in any way. They have certain talking points they want, and it is not having, a week-long, 2-week debate about the Epstein files again. Donald Trump has said he's bored of the Epstein files previously. He said, everyone's bored of this. Why did the press keep asking me about it? But yeah, it's a story that won't go away, particularly with this committee in the House, which, just keeps releasing bits, of information at random periods. And you can expect it to keep going because, of course, the shutdown, the shutdown of the government here in DC is ending now. And that is something that Donald Trump is celebrating. However, it also means that, congressmen are going to be back in action. And one of the votes we expect to happen, which started last night, is the sense of, started last night in America, is the sense of releasing even more files. And that is something that so far Donald Trump has resisted. Some say because he doesn't want what's in it, others say because it's legally complicated. But it means Epstein will just keep dominating the news in the way he doesn't want.
And so, Katie, for our viewers then, update and explain who has been releasing these files. And obviously, this is a topic that's not, in most people's minds, party political. But is there an element of party politicisation about it?
There's certainly an element of party political in the manner in which the files are being released. So you have a committee, just as a select committee in Parliament would, which has a mix of, parties on it, but of course it's just two parties, the Republicans and the Democrats. And therefore, you've had different statements coming from this committee. So last week, for example, you had Democrats on the committee calling for Prince Andrew to give evidence at Congress. That was not a Republican call. But, the different parties will do different things on it. Certainly the Democrats have an interest in trying to embarrass and cause problems for Donald Trump. It's not a coincidence that they have released specific things, and then the Republican response was almost to flood the zone, as Steve Bannon, the former White House strategist, might put it, by putting out thousands, tens of thousands of files. So, critics didn't know where to start, and there were other news stories out there. So there's a political element. However, what information comes out, even if you take party politics aside, there is a question as to, is the information new, is it damaging, and does it change the story for the president and others? And I think that's the thing to really keep an eye on amidst all the fire and fury coming from both sides.
Katie, as always, a pleasure, particularly grateful for you staying up for us. Thanks so much.
Now, next this morning, we're talking about calls from opposition parties for an investigation into Downing Street's head of communications.
It comes as concerns have been raised about the perception of a conflict of interest with a lobbying company he owns a minority stake in. Our deputy political editor, Sam Coates, has been investigating this story.
Politics can be a force for good. We will show that. We've changed the Labour Party, returned it to service, and that is how we will govern.
A promise of change from a Prime Minister who was elected to end sleaze and govern for the country.
But Sky News can reveal allegations of a serious perceived conflict of interest at the heart of Number 10. Let's lay out the story. This man is Tom Baldwin, a journalist, Starmer's biographer and a long-time friend of the Prime Minister. Here, he's speaking at an event 2 days after Labour won the election, held by the lobbying company Strand Partners. And he had just become Strand Partners' strategic advisor, someone who talks to clients about politics but does not lobby for the firm. Now, there's no suggestion that either the firm or Tom has done anything wrong. But who was sat next to him? Well, it was this man, Tim Allen, one-time spin doctor for Tony Blair, and in the last couple of years, chairman and part owner of Strand Partners. But from the start of September, he got a new role. So let's take you through how all of this fits together. The Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, is at the centre of it all. He's close, as we said, with Tom Baldwin, who we mentioned earlier. And here's Tim Allen. Now in government, he joined the Number 10 team as part of a reset in September. He's now Executive Director of Communications. Baldwin is an advisor for Strand Partners, as we say. And here he is at multiple events held by the company over the last year, including one in late September this year at Labour Party conference. The company is clear that he's not a lobbyist, and for context, as a long-time journalist, he's also a regular commentator, including on Sky News. 2 weeks ago, he discussed his thoughts on government's planned tax rises.
I've spoken to quite a few of them over the last few days, and the answer is they haven't yet decided. It's a big, big decision. There's a lot of politics in it, and it'll probably go to the wire.
Still debating between Number 10 and Number 11?
Inside Number 11, inside Number 10, elsewhere in government.
Now back to Tim Allen. When he entered government, he stepped down as a director of Strand Partners, but he still has a 10% share in the company. Now, I want you to look at this. It's the listing on Companies House. The 100,000 that you've got here, well, that equates to 10% of the company. Some see that as a perceived conflict of interest, particularly as we understand that Allen has had conversations about politics with Baldwin, a man who is paid by the company Tim Allen has a share in. Labour says Allen speaks to Baldwin because he's a journalist. The issue of a perceived conflict of interest is really important because advisors must follow the Cabinet Office Code of Conduct, which says that they must ensure that no conflict arises, could reasonably be perceived to arise between their official duties and their private interests, financial or otherwise.
Labour, on behalf of Tim Allen, said the allegation that Tim Allen has done anything to benefit Strand whilst in Number 10 is categorically false. Any interactions with him
are in his capacity as a journalist. Strand Partners said Tom Baldwin does not engage in government relations for Strand, and this is not part of his terms of engagement with us. Tim Allen receives no financial benefit from Strand and is not involved in our operations. One member of Labour's ruling National Executive Committee told me Tim Allen should give up his shareholding. Others went further.
What do you make of what's happened?
I think it's extraordinary that someone still has shares who's at the heart of Downing Street. I think there's lots of questions still to be asked. I think it's important to know what these supposed appropriate mitigations are. What exactly are those, and do they pass the public sniff test?
What do you think should happen now?
Well, there should be a full Cabinet Office investigation. I think the public need to see there are no conflicts of interest and no perceived conflicts of interest, and that's not where we are right now.
I've written to the Cabinet Secretary today because this appears to be a clear conflict of interest right at the heart of government. It cannot be the case that the Executive Director of Communications for the government has shareholdings in a lobbying firm and is continuing to have conversations with senior consultants at that firm.
The man in the background tasked with fixing Keir Starmer's image, now facing questions of his own. Sam Coates, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, next hour, Sam's going to be with us in the studio, so we'll be having a bit of a closer look at about this report, which we also, of course, asked Ed Miliband about earlier.
Yeah, much more to come on that, and look forward to seeing Sam in person. Now, Sky News has been given rare access to a specialist unit tasked with crushing illegal migration out of Libya to Europe.
The team worked through the night to stop refugees making that perilous journey across the Mediterranean, often responding at a moment's notice, so it's a constant battle with smuggling gangs.
Well, eastern Libya is controlled by a powerful leader and a militia keen to show they can crack down on smugglers and their cargo. In return, they seek European funding and recognition.
Well, Sky Special Correspondent Alex Crawford and her team, of course, were given access to this detention centre in Benghazi, somewhere where hundreds of migrants are being held.
We've seen inside East Libya's detention centres, which are generally off limits. They're packed with those caught being smuggled to Europe. We talked to the men accused of being people smugglers. And we're with the forces trying to break the international smuggling networks crossing the sea from North Africa. The trade in humans is one of the most lucrative ways of making money in East Libya right now. A lot of people. A lot of people. Amongst the shops and cafes, out of sight of our cameras, underground smuggling outfits are plotting to move the most desperate illegally across borders. The law enforcers we're with rely a lot on informants and intelligence. They've been watching some locations which they believe to be suspicious and full of people who are going to try to cross the water, and we're going to go with them. They go heavily armed. There's a huge amount of money at stake here and unscrupulous people. They've no idea what they're heading into.
And if you scan the QR code on your screen right now, you can watch Alex's full report. Part 2, of course, we showcased some of Part 1 yesterday with her here in the studio. Really quite exclusive and unique reporting.
Yeah, we talk so much, don't we, about the small boats crisis and what it means, you know, on the channel. We see those images quite a lot, but it is really something else to see the volume of people making that Mediterranean crossing and what is happening to them as well.
Absolutely. Kudos again to Alex and the team. After the break, we'll be joined by the former clinical midwife, Donna Ockenden, to discuss the state of maternity care in England.
Eastern Libya is the new doorway to Europe for people being smuggled from Africa and Asia.
We are close to Greece. You can see it.
We've obtained unprecedented access to the authorities.
Do you feel you're just scratching the surface?
We've been on the raids, out with the Coast Guard,
That's so desperate.
and inside the detention centres.
How did you cope with that?
To find what's pushing people to Europe and what's driving the authorities here to stop them.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling. War, unrest, revolutions.
It's not his country, it's ours.
They have succeeded for the first time in their country's history in removing a leader from power. No freedom! Sky News, the full story first. There was fighting here, but there's clearly now a lull, and they're using it to bring up more ammunition. This is a mass exodus in which Russia is hemorrhaging some of its brightest and its best. According to the local weather channel, there have been more than 2,500 lightning strikes and flash flooding, all on top of this week's lethal tornado. What stays with you most in this job is some of the people you meet. What is your worst fear about what the Russians want to do to the children?
They're just boosting demographics by stealing young people.
Would you like to take the opportunity, Mr. President, on Sky News to invite Barack Obama to come here? Mr. Trump, are you running for president? Can you confirm it?
We're going to take a look, a very serious look.
On that day, we saw your fighters killing women, killing children. Was that a mistake? Did you go too far? You couldn't control your fighters? The full force of the state is being used to crush any protest. Free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
Another alarm. The mood here is jittery and nervous.
We're seeing the world get more and more divided, and it's our job to try to make sense of it all.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Hello, welcome back. Well, back in June, the Health Secretary announced a national investigation into maternity care in England, and it's been looking at the worst performing maternity and neonatal services in the country. With the report due back next month, what can we expect? Well, joining us now is Donna Ockenden, who is a former clinical midwife. She led the Ockenden Review, which is really, for me, like the gold standard review into failings in maternity care. It was at the Shrewsbury and Telford Hospital NHS Trust. She's also leading the independent review at Nottingham University Hospital's NHS Trust. It's great to have you on at the programme. I'm slightly obsessed with the work that you've done, to be honest.
Thank you.
Because I just think that maternity care is in such an appalling state, if I'm being completely honest with you. Do you have any hope that this new review is going to change things?
So I think that since my final report was published in March 2022, we've had a clear picture of what we need to do. We've spoken about this many times, Sophie, and I think back then we had a blueprint for maternity safety, and if only we had done everything that I think government did intend to do back then, we would be in a better place.
And what's gone wrong? What's the roadblock to it?
So back in March 2022, you'll remember Sajid Javid, the then Secretary of State for Health, fully endorsed all of our findings, as did the then opposition, Labour Party and others. And we just haven't done enough, quickly enough, systematically enough, and now we are where we are.
Do you think it's because, you know, the government's been sort of distracted by other stuff, or is this actually about, you know, the NHS itself and culture change being difficult in the NHS? What do you think?
I think it's a multiplicity of factors. Certainly, our findings were widely welcomed and endorsed by thousands of families. I remember getting, you know, all those messages, and all of the Royal Colleges and professional associations. So it was a lost opportunity for a number of reasons, and we need absolutely now to get back on track.
What's the number one thing that should be done then, do you think?
So
I know there's loads, but...
Well, OK, I'm going to say there is the Ockenden 4. Workforce and training still haven't been fixed. Funding hasn't been fixed. But what I also hear, and I talk to hundreds of families and staff on the ground across the country most months, is this issue of not listening to families, not hearing and amplifying women's voices, but crucially as well, not listening to staff on the ground.
Yeah, this is the listening thing. I think it really comes into it. I was interested, actually, while you're here as well, to get your view on at-home births, because it's been in the news a little bit recently after a woman called Jennifer Cahill. It was awful, I'll be honest. It's absolutely awful, devastating case. She died alongside her daughter. Appalling. There's been a lot of debate about home births. What's your view on it?
So I followed that terrible, tragic, appalling case, really closely in the news. And I think that this feeds into a long-term concern about this ideology of normal births. So again, talking to staff on the ground, specifically student midwives, I do have an ongoing concern that midwives are joining the profession now without the skill set that they need. Student midwives have said to me recently, well, we're qualifying as midwives, but we know that we don't have the skills that we need to care for, the higher risk population that we have now. And perhaps there almost needs to be a reframing of issues so that where birth happens at home, that is a specific skill set, not, being supported by midwives who've already been on duty for 12, 13, 14 hours. I hear that a lot from midwives on the ground.
Can I ask you about the resident doctor strikes, if I may? Look, I know this isn't directly in your brief or anything like that, and maternity services will be protected. But do you have concerns that the ongoing strikes by a lot of people who work at the NHS, it is having an impact on all kinds of health providers, whether it's other people having to work longer in order to cover for them or for people just being in unsafe circumstances?
I think it's regrettable that this is now happening. I've got 160 plus, doctors, midwives, nurses on my team, and every single one of them in some way will have their work affected because of the need to cover.
That's interesting. So even though they say, A&E is protected, maternity is protected, what kind of knock-on does it have?
Well, so the consultants on my team are obstetricians and gynecologists. Maternity is not an island and it feeds into so many other services. So protected is one thing, but actually what happens on the ground can be very different.
Just finally, you have throughout your life been an advocate for vulnerable people, right? You're trying to give people a voice when they feel that they don't always have a voice. And you see that often with maternity care with, black women and all kind of other people as well. And I was just so fascinated by your own story. You kind of you've experienced poverty, you were homeless for a bit, you were taken out of school and then you organised your own education.
I did.
I mean, I just think it's completely inspiring. I don't know, what drives you? How did you cope with it all?
Well, I was brought up and it's still a family motto today, be the best you can. That was my nanny Beryl, my daddy, and my poor troubled mum as well. And that's something that's remained with me. Be the best you can every single day, from the minute you open your eyes till the minute you close your eyes much later. And that is what pushes me on.
Do you think it helps in a way, the perspective it gives you? Like being a bit of an outsider in kind of, the establishment, if you know what I mean?
Possibly, yes, but I'm also very aware that, when I walk into a room in Nottingham to meet with families, and we meet with families from all walks of life, the common factor is that they've been harmed in some way. It isn't about me. I have to leave that Donna, to an extent, outside the door because my focus, laser-like focus then, is on getting those family voices heard.
And you've certainly, spent your career doing that.
I have. I hope so.
No, you
more
have.
To do, more to do.
Always, always. Thank you so much for being on the programme. It's always good to speak to you.
Thank you.
John Rockenden speaking to us there.
Fantastic, inspirational.
Genuinely.
There. We've got a little bit of time left, so we can look back on one of the big stories of the last 36 hours. Of course, it's that threat, rumoured or otherwise, to the Prime Minister's leadership. Here was Ed Miliband on whether he'd like to ever return to the front line of the Labour Party again or not.
some names have been mentioned as potential successors over the last couple of days. We're Streeting, obviously, Shabana Mahmood, Ed Miliband. Do you fancy doing a Donald Trump coming back for more?
Definitely not.
Is that
Look,
ruling out then, categorically?
Yeah. Look, I had the greatest inoculation kind of technique for wanting to be leader of the Labour Party by being leader of the Labour Party.
Did you think it was genuine?
Yeah, I did. That was very genuine and quite amusing. But yeah, just genuinely. It's the type of response. I guess he's the only person. Neil Kinnock could, I guess, say the same thing, but it came across pretty well. Please, not again.
Yeah, I've done that already.
Which, by the way, I think is interesting, just because he sort of tops the Labour list's polls amongst the rank-and-file Labour Party members. It doesn't seem to get as much coverage that as when we were always talking about Tory Game of Thrones, of who was top of the Conservative home polls. But he's popular amongst the ranks.
He is. And I have to say, Number 10 have done their bit to get us talking about the leadership battle anyway this week, so we're trying to do our bit. Lots more coming up in just a few moments.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force. It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Good morning, it is 9 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Bridge and Frost.
With Sophie and Wilf, a very good morning from me as well.
The UK's economic slowdown continues with the latest growth figures of just 0.1%. Bad news for the Chancellor ahead of a budget later this month.
President Trump brings the longest government shutdown in US history to an end, just hours after being named again in newly released emails from paedophile Jeffrey Epstein.
The Prime Minister apologises to West Streeting. He says he never authorised briefing from his number 10 team that said he was plotting a coup.
Also had pressure on social media giant TikTok over how they keep their users safe online.
Plus, we're going to be joined by the actor Tamsin Greig to discuss her new film. It follows a young refugee in foster care.
A very good morning to you. The latest figures on the UK economy released this morning show growth was slower than expected in the 3 months to September. The Office for National Statistics said GDP increased by 0.1%.
Now, it is the final figure to come out before the Chancellor's budget in just under a fortnight. So what does it mean for Rachel Reeves? But more importantly, what does it mean for us all as well? Our economics and data editor, Ed Conway, is here with us to explain.
Yeah, in short, the economy is flatlining. I mean, that's basically it. But let me show you. I can show you kind of the detail of what we're talking about here, because when we talk about gross domestic product, what is it? It's basically a measure of just how fast the economy is growing. And in practical terms, that is just how much better off we're getting each year. And this is showing you GDP in recent quarters. Normally, it's looked at one quarter to the next. And so what we have here is the latest quarter. That's the third quarter of this year, so kind of up to and including September. And you can see that number there, 0.1% growth. The bars are basically just showing you how fast it's growing. That was lower than economists had expected. They thought it was going to be kind of 0.2 or so. But either way, you kind of take a step back from this, and there was pretty strong growth just earlier on this year, and indeed in kind of in early 2024. But things seem to have tailed off, and I think that's perhaps what Rachel Reeves might find disappointing. Worth just saying, those numbers here, that's the sum total of money that we're generating, extra money we're generating, output across the economy. That is not kind of dividing it by head of the population. And you really should be doing that to get a better sense of how well off we're feeling or how much better off across the economy we're feeling. Obviously, it differs by your experience. But when you do that, so adjust it for kind of divide it by head of the population, GDP per head, per capita, then look, that 0.1 has just become 0. So really, it is basically flatlining. And what is the reason behind this? Well, here's what's kind of interesting. You'll have seen, just recently in the news, that cyber attack at Jaguar Land Rover. Normally, we don't talk when it comes to GDP releases. We're not talking specifically about corporate stories. But here, it's had such a bearing on this that number could well have been positive if it were not for this cyber attack. And if you look at the car industry as a whole, so all this is showing you is the level of output across the car industry, across all of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, showing you that what's happened in recent years. Look at what happened in September, OK? This is September. Just look at that. That is a 28.6% fall in the output of the car industry in that period. And we have never, apart from COVID, we've never seen a fall as big as that in that industry. And as I say, that contributes to the bigger economic picture. Worth just saying, normally, when these numbers come out, we then get an opportunity to talk, all of the economics editors get an opportunity to interview the Chancellor. The Treasury has decided not to do that this time around.
Really? That is interesting.
Which is a bit of a shame, because there's a lot going on here, and obviously it's in the run-up to the budget. There's another question in terms of that sort of overall picture of the economy, whether it's this month or this quarter or stepping back a bit. Generally speaking, it's been flatlining or tepid growth for quite some time. And everyone can sort of debate on the ideological argument of how you trigger growth, and you can say, look, a bit more taxes is fine when it comes with a bit more spending, and spending can spur growth. That's kind of what was tried a year ago. I guess it's fair to say this time, Ed, if we're all kind of guessing what's going to be in the budget, if taxes are just going up to fill a hole from elsewhere and spending isn't going up to match it, almost any economist would look at that and say, it's going to be hard to catalyse growth from here if all that's really changing is the tax part and you're not matching it with increased spending as well.
I think that's part of the challenge. Is when you look back kind of 12 months ago, what we were hearing about from the Chancellor was, here's the big projects we're going to be doing. We're going to, and it did represent a massive change. the government was going to invest a lot more in the future, and they want to carry on doing that spending. But you're right, that is kind of the growth story. That's, you're building new stations, you're building new railways, you're building new kind of hospitals and so on and so forth. Some of that can generate growth, or some of that can kind of improve productivity across the economy. The problem is this time around, they seem to be filling a hole, and a hole that's partly of their own making, because obviously you've got all of these U-turns that have happened and need to be paid for. And so when you're doing that, you've got that issue on top of the fact that those charts I've been showing you, the economy's not growing as fast as was expected, not as much tax revenue coming in. That's just not great news.
Can I ask a really obvious question here, right? Because we spend so much time talking about growth, right? And politicians do, they all promise it, it is at the heart of all their plans. GDP is a number thrown about. Why does growth impact people, right? If you're sitting at home watching this, why do you care what the GDP number is?
There are many different ways of looking at how well we as a country are doing, and GDP is by far and away not the definitive thing. But of all the statistics out there, it's about the best one that gives you a sense of, are you doing a little bit better than you were a few quarters ago? Because what it's just measuring...
Are you feeling a bit better off in your life?
Are you feeling
able
better?
to get by?
And that's why I wanted to show not just the overall GDP number. And what is GDP? It's basically the sum total of everything we are doing across the economy. That's it. And it's measured in pounds, because that's what we tend to kind of measure the output in. But it's just what we're doing, how well things are going. And you saw it in the pandemic. It went down very sharply and it came up because people were doing this. This time around, the issue is we're just not generating as much of it as quickly as we have done in previous years. And that's not just a Labour government issue. That's been a problem for the Conservatives. It's been a problem for quite some time. And no one has managed out. Every government has come into office and said, we need more growth. It's not because they're obsessed with GDP. It's because they want people to feel better off. And part of the issue, I think, going back the last few years, is people haven't felt better off, and that's fed into everything else, really, hasn't it?
That's totally it. And if it's that kind of slightly intangible feeling that things are feeling harder, things are not as easy as they used to be, those charts basically explain why.
I've got a chart for that, but don't worry. Next time.
Eddie, great stuff as always. Thank you. Now, President Trump has been named again in newly released emails from paedophile billionaire Jeffrey Epstein. In one email, Epstein claims the president knew about the girls and even spent hours with one of the alleged victims at Epstein's home.
Now, around 20,000 pages of emails and documents were released by a congressional committee last night. And look, obviously it put pressure right back on the White House to release the Epstein files in full.
In one email, Epstein wrote to his associate and convicted sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell in 2011, "I want you to realise that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump." A victim, whose name has been redacted, spent hours at my house with him. He's never once been mentioned, police chief, etc. I'm 75% there.
But in another email to the author, Michael Wolff, in 2019, Epstein wrote, "Trump said he asked me to resign, never remember, ever. Of course he knew about the girls, as he asked Ghislaine to stop."
And in another one, Mr. Wolff wrote to Epstein to say about Trump, "If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the house, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you, or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him, generating a debt."
Well, last night the president signed a bill to end the US government shutdown. A 43-day shutdown was the longest in US history, but slightly unusually for Trump. He didn't take any questions from the media after signing that bill. Wonder why. His press secretary, Karen Levitt, had been in front of the media earlier in the day. She gave this reaction.
Thank you very much. These emails prove absolutely nothing other than the fact that President Trump did nothing wrong. And what President Trump has always said is that he was from Palm Beach, and so was Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was a member at Mar-a-Lago until President Trump kicked him out because Jeffrey Epstein was a pedophile and he was a creep.
Well, our US correspondent, Martha Kellner, has more for us.
definitely pressure intensifying on the president. And as you say, senior members of his own party are calling for the full release of the Epstein files now. It's rare that you see the president in the Oval Office after 9 p.m. in the evening, but that's exactly where he was tonight. It was supposed to be this big celebratory moment for him, reopening the US government, as you say, after the longest shutdown in history. And he did his best to try and bask in that moment. He was talking about the economy, in his estimations, being in rude health. He was talking about a new era of affordability. The problem, though, for this president is there was a group of journalists in the corner of that room echoing much of the American public in asking questions about only one issue, and that is the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. It is the saga that is engulfing this White House. It's kind of been drip, drip, drip in terms of political damage to the president. And now we have this tidal wave of new information, thousands upon thousands of documents. And I guess at the heart of it are two key questions, which are what, if anything, did this president know about Jeffrey Epstein's criminality, and when did he know it? But, you know, huge pressure on Donald Trump growing, and it was telling, as you said, that he exited that room without taking questions from journalists. Usually you can't shut Donald Trump up, but he did not want to talk about Jeffrey Epstein.
Well, President Trump has consistently denied any wrongdoing in relation to Epstein and has previously called the allegations a hoax.
Now, the head of the trade union representing resident doctors, the BMA, has said they don't want people to suffer when it comes to the strikes, but they do have to go ahead. Junior doctors, or resident doctors as they're now known, walking out for 5 days from tomorrow over pay, which they say is still way down compared to 2008.
Well, the Health Secretary has urged the union to call off the strike and accused doctors of acting like a cartel, threatening the future of the NHS. Our health correspondent Ashish Joshi sat down with the BMA chair, Dr. Tom Dolphin.
A prolonged industrial dispute makes people annoyed with both sides, and it makes people feel like, why can't you just reach a resolution on this? We feel the same way. We would like to reach a resolution on this. It is, vexing to us that we are still in this dispute. So I understand patients' frustration. I understand their annoyance that strikes are still happening. But if we don't solve these problems, if we don't fix the pay and we don't fix the jobs, those problems are going to build up.
Well, our health correspondent Ashish Joshi is here to tell us more. It's interesting, what came out to you from that interview?
What came out for me was the fact that the two sides are so far apart and they are both deeply entrenched, and there is no love lost between the BMA and the Health Secretary. The Health Secretary is furious. He came in to his post, and the first thing he did was resolve the 2-year-long dispute. And here's a Health Secretary who is wedded to his job. He cares about the NHS. Whatever side of the political fence you stand on or sit on, you have to say that Wes Streeting is all about the NHS. I've lost track of the amounts of health secretaries I worked with while the Conservatives were in power. For them, it wasn't a health secretary dedicated to the job. Wes Streeting has said he wants to fix the NHS. He can't do it with the resident doctors on strike. So that's the first thing he did when he came into power. Now he feels he's been completely let down. They think that they've been let down because he came in and said, this is the start of a process. And as far as the BMA are concerned, the process has ended.
In terms of the actual standoff, one of the other things that I'm taken back to for all those other strikes in the Tory years was often people would say, they won't even meet with me, and the other side would say, oh, I've offered a meeting. Like, it was like absurd. There wasn't even a conversation. With this, what is exactly what the BMA is saying they wanted, and what Wes Streeting is offering? Because I guess we know what the gap is here. It's quite wide.
Yeah, it's quite wide, and essentially it boils down to money. The BMA will say it's about money and about working conditions for resident doctors and their training and the guarantee of work afterwards. Wes Streeting will say he's made a pay restoration of 29%, and he is finding other ways of making sure that recruitment and retention of resident doctors is a priority. And the resident doctors are not happy with that. And I asked Tom Dolphin in that interview, I said, essentially, does this just boil down to money? And he said, well, it boils down to training and pay conditions, but ultimately, yes. And he accepts that the government is in a very tight fiscal situation. It doesn't have the public sector purse that Wes Streeting would need to go to, Rachel Reeves, and say, I need more money. He's not going to get it. He knows he's not going to get it. So he's just said, I have no more money, and they've let me down, and they're holding the NHS and the country to ransom.
It's one of those things where we should probably move on, but I'm really interested in this story. I think it's like really impacting people and gets the heart of some of those government issues as well. Can I ask you about public support? Has that changed? And also, what about the support within the resident doctors themselves, right? How many of them are voting for this? Has that changed?
Yeah, no, it has changed. Both have changed.
Yeah.
There was a lot of public support for resident doctors at the beginning of their industrial action over 2 years ago. The public were on board. They felt that the doctors were being underpaid. That has changed substantially, and I think the BMA accepts that they don't have that goodwill that they did at the start of the industrial action over 2 years ago, so that's gone. When I work inside hospitals, and this is anecdotal, right? There's no data to back this up, and I put this to Dr. Dolphin. I said, you don't even have the support of your colleagues inside the hospital. He said, well, we do. And I said, well, I've spoken to consultants who have to step up. Every time you go on industrial action or take strike action, they have to step up and plug the gaps.
Which is Donna Rockenden's
And Donna, I was listening to your interview, and she said exactly the same. Because departments don't work in silos. If you go into A&E, yes, you're going to be seen by an A&E consultant. You need a blood test. You know, where are the staff who are going to process those blood tests and everything else? Everything is interrelated, and that puts a lot of pressure on a hospital when the junior doctors go out on strike. The resident doctors go out on strike.
Really interesting.
Great stuff as always. Thanks so much. We're going to talk a bit more with Ashish later in the show. There's some latest statistics from the NHS come out at 9:30. So hopefully we'll see Ashish later on as well. Still to come, why TikTok is planning to replace some of its staff with AI and what that could mean for online safety. We'll talk about that next.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone, and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back. Well, since the introduction of the Online Safety Act 2 years ago, there's been much attention on whether children and adults are safer online now. MPs are concerned that a plan by TikTok to cut staff in its UK trust and safety teams could endanger user protection, and they plan to replace some of those staff with AI. Well, Dame Chi Onwurah is the Labour MP for Newcastle upon Tyne Central and West. She's written to TikTok asking for clarity on the proposed cuts. A very good morning to you. Thanks so much.
Good morning, Rolf.
I guess, and we should mention as well, of course, you're on the Science Committee and focus a lot on this area. It's not totally new to see a social media company cut staff in this area. I guess Facebook has hired a whole load and then let that settle. How big a change is it from the TikTok UK perspective?
So just to go back one step, earlier this year, TikTok came to my committee and they said that they were working really, really hard to address parents, particularly concerns about the content that their children are being served on TikTok, high-risk content, pornography, high-risk challenges, self-harm, etc. And they told us that they felt accountable to British people through our committee and that they were working really, really hard to address those concerns and that they had thousands of people around the world working on this. And in comparison to Twitter, or X, which was full-on sort of Elon Musk, what is harmful content, or Facebook, who were sort of Elon Musk fanboys at the time, they were very engaging and credible. And so to hear sort of 6 months later that they're making hundreds of people in the UK redundant, my question is, have things got better since then? Are there less concerns? Are parents happier or kids happier? And the answer to that is definitely no. If anything, there are more concerns with generative AI and with deep fakes, etc. And so the fact that they are reducing their staff, I think that is something new. Given that the volume of content, the volume of concern is rising, to go backwards and to reduce their staff and say that that is because of AI, when we know there are issues with AI moderating content. We took evidence that said, there are a number of issues with AI making decisions about what content is suitable for young people or for vulnerable people. So that's why we're very concerned. And they won't give us the evidence. They won't say we're doing this because we've seen that AI can be better than human beings. They're just saying that, this is what we believe.
Just as a side, that's interesting. Did you say that X and Meta, the parent of Facebook and Instagram, are more genuinely engaged on this?
No, I'd say that they said, for example, X, didn't always recognise that there was such a thing as harmful content, and they use community notes to moderate content. And Facebook were going in the direction of community notes, whereas TikTok said that they used real people, together with AI as a support.
In terms of where we might end up in the next decade or so, I guess one of the factors that has allowed social media maybe freer reign, depending how you word it, than some people would have liked, is that they've always said that we're not publishers. It's a meeting place, and under free speech laws, we can all say what we like, within reason. And they're not held to account for the content in the same way that we would as a publisher. Is it looking like, both here in the US, that with AI it's going to be different, because the answers that we read, the viewpoints that we read, aren't coming from somebody else, individual, that's protected by free speech. They're coming from an algorithm which the company owns. So I wonder whether there's oddly hope coming back that way, that they will be more responsible for the content than perhaps social media platforms have been in the last decade.
So my committee took a lot of evidence over this, and you're absolutely right. This debate about whether they're publishers or not has been sort of raging. And using the word publisher, I'm not sure that helps, but what is certain, and what we said in our recommendations, is that they have responsibility. They have responsibility for their content. They are not just like a sort of, empty tubes or whatever, that stuff goes down. And that is even more the case with generative AI, which is trained on people's data and which is generated, as a word again, by the companies. So we've called on the government to extend the Online Safety Act so that it does cover generative AI, and in addition to put more responsibilities on the platforms. We won't call them publishers, call them what they want them to be called, but they have a responsibility for the content they publish. I think everybody, it seems obvious to most people. And just in addition, you know, everybody who's on a social media platform effectively has a sort of, or talking to a chatbot or whatever, has a sort of digital twin, which is all about them, which is what, you know, knows what they like, what they interact with. And so that is really targeting content at that person. And if the platforms haven't got responsibility for that content that's been targeted at that person, you know, who should have? So we want the government to put in place greater regulation on generative AI and to do it, you know, and to understand what these algorithms, which are not transparent. You know, one of the other things that came out of our inquiry was, you know, nobody knows how these algorithms work. So if TikTok is saying they're protecting kids, you know, there's no way we can verify that. So to have a right to look at those algorithms, and also for people to have a right to delete their data on social media platforms, those are some of the things which we think can help.
Gee, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Great to have you in there.
Really interesting, actually, to hear you know, some of those issues debated in that way. Coming up, the new film that explores the plight of the refugee crisis through the eyes of a child. We'll be talking to the lead actors. That's next.
Welcome back to Mornings with Ridge and Frost. The top stories. The UK's economic slowdown continued during the third quarter of the year with growth of just 0.1%. It's bad news for the Chancellor as she needs to get the economy moving ahead of the budgets.
The White House has said emails from Jeffrey Epstein alleging that President Trump spent hours with the victim of the paedophile financier are part of a smear campaign by the Democrats.
These emails prove absolutely nothing other than the fact that President Trump did nothing wrong.
The Prime Minister has said he'll investigate briefings that led to suggestions the Health Secretary was plotting a leadership coup. Sir Keir Starmer's apologised to Wes Streeting for the briefing. The Energy Secretary has told us whoever's responsible will be sacked.
I've talked to Keir before about this kind of briefing that happens, and as he always says, if he finds the person, he'll get rid of them, and I absolutely believe he would do that.
The British Medical Association has defended a 5-day walkout by resident doctors starting tomorrow. The union insists it's been forced to strike because pay is still way down.
Right, let's tell you now about a new short film which aims to highlight the plight of refugees. Largo follows 10-year-old Syrian refugee Musa in foster care in the UK. It tells of his desperate attempt to sail home and find his missing parents.
Now, the people behind the film say they want to humanise the refugee debate, and they hope it's going to spark conversations when it's shown in UK schools during Refugee Week next June. Let's show you a teaser.
Well, delighted to say we're joined now by two of the stars of the film, Tamsin Greig, very good morning, and Zach El-Sakari, very good morning to you as well. Do you know what? Usually, if there's a reason when we have someone younger on, we have to sort of help them with their confidence, to be proper little film star here.
Yeah, it's true. It's totally true.
We're so looking forward to seeing this. Has it been a really fun project?
It has. It was my first, and it was just really fun. It wasn't like stressful or anything, as maybe some people might expect, but it was actually like almost as maybe an activity. I don't know, but it was really fun, and I really enjoy acting as a whole.
How did you get involved in it?
Well, my mum's friend is the producer, so he gave me an audition tape and showed it, so I did the audition, and then we went, and then the director saw it, and a year later, my mum, we were in the National Theatre, and we went to see the directors, and they started talking to me about it, and they told me I got the part as long as I cut my hair.
Oh, is that what they said?
Yeah.
Were you happy about cutting your hair? Or
Yeah, I was fine.
Yeah, you didn't mind.
It was way too long for my hair.
I love it.
Tamsin, I mean, how long have you been working towards this project? And tell us a bit about why you wanted to be involved in it.
I was sent the script through my agent, and I think it's a beautiful script, and I was immediately attracted to the idea of, obviously, the business that I'm in is about telling stories, and I think that's how we relate to lives rather than statistics. And I think it's a brilliant counter to some of the more negative narratives that are going around in the media and in the world in general about displaced people. And because it's about a human being, a boy, and his longing to find belonging, that's the thing that caught my imagination.
And it's been shown in schools. Is that something you're excited about? It might have a real kind of impact.
I think it's really brilliant that that's part of the project's aim, is to take this story into schools, because it's about a boy, a 10-year-old boy, and those schools will be being able to relate to the experience of this displaced child who has nothing and has nobody. And Grace is the character that I play, who has fostered him, is in the middle of the difficulty that then is caused by that choice, because she is then facing hostility as well as Musa in their community, for people who don't think it's something that should be happening. So for it to be seen by young people, I think is really important.
Zach, do you look forward to this being shown in not just schools around the country, but in your school as well? Do you think your friends will like it?
I'm sure they will, because they already know that I do acting, and they're actually quite supportive. So I'm actually really excited for them to see it, and I'm very confident that they will like it.
Can you talk a bit about the character, your character in the film? So you're a 10-year-old Syrian refugee who is fostered by Tamsin's character. How did you kind of prepare for it? What's the character like?
Well, it was kind of hard because Musa, well, he's a bit like an old man in the body of a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
He's much more emotionally mature than the average 10-year-old. So I had to I had to really try and figure it out. But the way that I figured out how I could act as this character was to just simply think about how I would be feeling if I was in his shoes, what my life would be like, what my pains and my joys would be, and that is how I got it.
Yeah, you can tell how deeply you've thought about it. Like, genuinely.
It was like it was probably the deepest thing I've ever done, because it was like sad. Even just filming, even if you know that there are cameras all around you, it's still sad to think about what this kid was going through.
Tamsin, you're going to have to help him get a job in sort of a Fantastic Four movie or something less heavy next, so that he can kind of enjoy it a bit more. But it sounds like you've managed that, not only to nail the role, but also enjoy it. And Tamsin, obviously I think it's going to be shown during Refugee Week in schools. What about for other people that want to watch it now? Is it out already, or where can they find it?
So it's for consideration at BAFTA, and it's longlisted for the Oscars as well. Congratulations, Musa.
And you too.
Yeah, thank you. And it's also being shown at the Holly Shorts Film Festival in London this weekend, so it can be seen there. There are other platforms, you know, people, if you want to find it, you can find it, and it's called Largo.
Well, I didn't know about the. I hope you're going along to some of these awards things. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, it will.
Well,
definitely will.
Yeah, well, enjoy and congratulations,
Thank you.
Zach, Tamsin. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you
Great
so
to
much.
see you.
Thanks. Now to politics, because there have been calls from opposition parties for an investigation into Downing Street's head of communications.
It comes as concerns have been raised about the perception of a conflict of interest with a lobbying company he owns a minority stake in. Well, we asked the Energy Secretary, Ed Miliband, about it. Let's have a listen to what he said.
As I understand it, all the proper procedures were gone through in Downing Street. The story I read on Sky said that there was no allegation that either Tom Baldwin or Tim Allen had done anything wrong or against the rules. So I don't think there's a major issue here.
So our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, is here to tell us a bit more about this. Sam, just step back a little bit for us and just tell us exactly what you've uncovered. We played the film earlier, but remind our viewers.
So this is a story about the most senior spin doctor in Number 10. He joined at the start of September. His name is Tim Allen. Tim Allen has been around Westminster for years, primarily as a lobbyist. Now, he joined at the start of September, and when he did so, he gave up his directorships in the lobbying firm he has a minority stake in. That's called Strand Partners. But he didn't give up the stake. He didn't give up the shares. So you have somebody very senior in Number 10 who's got a stake in a lobbying company. That, I think, is, in the view of quite a lot of opposition politicians and indeed someone on the Labour National Executive, in itself a big surprise and a bit of a change from what we might have expected in the past. The other thing that we have been talking about this morning is that since joining government, Tim Allen has been talking about politics, about government affairs and politics, to one of the people who works for Strand Partners. That's one of their strategic advisors, Tom Baldwin. He's not a lobbyist, Tom. No suggestion that Strand or Tom has done anything wrong. But here we have somebody who owns shares in a lobbying company talking to somebody from that lobbying company about what's going on in government. And leader of the Greens, Zach Polansky, Liberal Democrats, Tories, all this morning saying, we need to look into this.
And what do you make of the way that the government's responded? I mean, we heard that from Ed Miliband, who said that, he kind of has read about the story this morning. He doesn't think there's something to see here.
So Ed Miliband's response is different from the rest of the government's response, not for the first time for Ed Miliband. The government's response is that Tim Allen can legitimately talk to Tom Baldwin because Tom wears many hats, but one of them is as a journalist. He writes the occasional newspaper article. And that they do not think there has been a conflict of interest because he went to the Cabinet Office, gave up the directorship, has decided not to take dividends and so on. Others would disagree with Ed Miliband's assessment, and there have been people writing to the Cabinet Secretary, to the Cabinet Office, demanding an investigation.
Sam, stick with us, because we want to also get your take on the other big story from Westminster and Downing Street over the last couple of days, and that's, of course, the briefing that happened against Wears Streeting. The Prime Minister has apologised to Wears Streeting about that, and this topic came up with Ed Miliband earlier. And Sophy was asking him what should happen, ultimately, to the person responsible for the briefing.
But my message to the Labour Party, though, is quite simple today, which is we need to focus on the country, not ourselves. You know, we were given a historic mandate last July, a historic opportunity to change our country, and we have a historic responsibility. And, you know, I've been at this a long time, as you know, Sophie. Governments go through days of turbulence. I was there during the Blair-Brown years. What gets you through, what sustains you is your sense of mission, your values, what you believe in, who you stand up for. And that is what really, really matters. And I know that Keir will hate all this nonsense, and we're going to focus on the country, and that's what we need to do.
You say it was bad briefing, you say Keir Starmer will hate all this nonsense. Does someone need to lose their job over this? Because someone's briefed it, right?
Well, look, I've talked to Keir before about this kind of briefing that happens, and as he always says, if he finds the person, he'll get rid of them, and I absolutely believe he would do that. The trouble is,
if he finds the person, you think that Keir Starmer will sack them?
Sure, yeah, but you and I know, Sophie, that you probably know more who the briefers are than I do. But you know, these things do happen, I'm afraid, in politics. I don't minimise them. I hate the culture of briefing, but there are long-standing aspect of politics. As I say, I was there between when Blair and Brown. There was lots and lots of briefing, as you will recall. Both of them, you know, also wanted to try and kind of control it, stop it.
Sam, I guess my question to you on this, 36 hours on from where it all started, is do you still think this is as big and an enduring issue for the Prime Minister as it was 24 hours ago? Has it died down much in your opinion or not?
Look, I think it'll ebb and flow in terms of how much we'll talk about it, but allies of Keir Starmer advertising his weakness, well, I don't think there's anybody in politics and quite a lot of people in the country who have taken notice of that. Look, the timeline is that on Tuesday we saw briefings against Wears Streeting. On Wednesday, we saw the Prime Minister denounce those briefings and being challenged to find out who did it. Not clear how serious any investigation into that is. And today there are calls for his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, to be fired, we read, by other members of the Cabinet. There's a factional warfare going on. This story is important whether we talk about it or not, because a government that's bound up with that is actually not getting on with the job. And that factional conversation, there are factions in Downing Street. I mean, we were just talking a moment ago about Tom Baldwin, who's close to Tim Allen. He was just on the radio sort of pointing the finger at Morgan McSweeney. You have all of these different groups now interlocking, locking horns. You know, you've just played a clip of Ed Miliband, whose name's being mentioned all over the place. Ed Miliband, former Labour leader, as somebody who'd take the ball from the back of the scrum, as somebody who would be elected by this Labour membership, according to the polling.
He denied it.
He denied it, yeah. I
so,
thought
Will, hang on, Wilf. What is convincing from a politician? How do we ever... Like, they do acting...
Can we play it? Let's play it.
Okay.
I'm interested to get your thought on this. Let's play it. Go on.
What is convincing?
Sorry, I put these guys on the spot now. They're like, hang on a minute. Sorry. Some names have been mentioned as potential successors over the last couple of days. Wears Streeting, obviously, Shabana Mahmood, Ed Miliband. Do you fancy doing a Donald Trump coming back for more?
Definitely not.
Is that ruling out then, categorically?
Yeah. Look, I had the greatest inoculation kind of technique for wanting to be leader of the Labour Party by being leader of the Labour Party.
All I will say, Wilf, is that I'm not going on your team on the traitors.
What? Go on, explain that. Sorry, we're a bit slow.
I mean, it's a bit early for us. If you're having to work out who's telling the truth, who's exaggerating, whether or not that statement by Ed Miliband is sincere, all I would gently say is to get to the top rank in British politics, you have to learn how to act. And seeing through whether or that is the truth or whether the act, well, maybe you know better than me, but all I would say is Who knows?
Well,
I'm not coming down on one side or the other.
I thought it seemed like he was genuinely. You don't. Oh, this is interesting.
You're welcome to believe. I am just eternally more cynical.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
And I'm playing for myself on the trade.
There you go. He's running.
All we're saying here is we're reacting to what people actually say in front of us.
But, bad idea in politics.
And I'm reacting to you.
Sam, as always, thanks very much. Now, Dua Lipa joins 40 other musicians calling for a cap on ticket resales. That story next.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force. It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Traveling is not just about the destination. It's also about how you get there. Fly Emirates, fly better. Fly Emirates, fly better. Thank you.
Hello, welcome back. Let's talk ticket prices for gigs, because Dua Lipa is the latest star to come up backing a cap on the amount that tickets can be resold for.
Coldplay and Radiohead have already said that the government should make good on its promise to stop concert goers being scammed or priced out of events by touts. Sally's here with some of the details. So what's the latest development on the story that people have kind of been aware of, I think, for a while?
Yeah, so the latest development is that that they've added their names to the statement because there haven't been any other developments. They've been waiting for something to happen. The government had promised it. In fact, Labour had promised it in its manifesto. And then once in power, the government announced that there was going to be plans to cap prices of secondary tickets. There was a consultation. There was also, a review into all of this. And despite all of that, there's been no legislation, no indication that there is going to be any legislation around this. And it is really difficult for the artists involved because they know that their fans want to come to their gigs to see them in action, and sometimes end up paying way over the odds. I had a look this morning at a few of these secondary websites. There are Radiohead tickets sales going on for £1,988. That's for a back row ticket.
Wow.
And also for the NBA games in London in January, £2,934 for one seat, which normally would go for around 327. That's like a 9 or 10-fold increase. It's absolutely insane the amount of money people have to end up spending.
It completely is. And, you know, one area that I do just raise again, though, is, you know, the way that ticket tout companies have greater share and power than they should is because most people, assessments say that they employ algorithms and computers to be there the moment the tickets drop, so that they move much quicker and they have more persistence than maybe we do to sit there and keep refreshed. They do it en masse, they buy the tickets. Because there is another solution to this, which is that these artists say to whoever they pick from the many ticket companies like Ticketmaster, and there are others, to sell their tickets in the first place, spread it out, do it slowly, and make the ability for a computer algorithm to do that the moment they drop much, much lower. And this is just that slight aspect of this, which is I'm not sure the government passing a law to say you can't resell tickets or whatever is actually even the most effective way of solving this. And there are things that these artists themselves could do if they just said, I'm not giving my tickets for this concert to this platform in the first place unless you adapt how you're selling them.
Yeah, this is another genuine thing as well, I feel, like, where, you know, if you look at artists today, and we spend an awful lot of time talking about, you know, the Coldplays, kind of Dua Lipas of the world, but for a lot of up-and-coming acts or smaller acts, you know, they rely so much on gigging, right? Because it's so hard to make money, I think, now as a music artist, unless you can get that live concert and that sort of direct connection with people and the fans, right?
Well, I don't know why they don't do what a lot of football clubs have started to do, which is you have to sell through the official club.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, so like a season ticket.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're when I'm selling an Arsenal ticket, I can't just sell it off to any old person without giving my phone to them to tap in. It has to be done through their official system, and they set the prices.
And that is a choice that these artists could make. So again, this is, you know, does it require legislation, or simply the artists to set the rules of how the tickets get sold? And that's the kind of slight gap.
And of course, we saw it a little bit, so just jumping on Oasis, where it was like if you sort of signed up in advance as a fan, then you got access to the first tranche of tickets. And I do know some people who, like, you know, kind of like genuine like Oasis fans who got the tickets that way before all the corporate, you know.
Well, I mean, again, Oasis obviously took control of the process, but then made the most of the higher demand and willingness to pay that was out there. So
I'm not going to get over that queue in a hurry.
But the point being there is, you know, they did cut out the touts, but they still made excess profits. So, you know, again, I think the artists could be in control if they really cared. They could control this and not say, "Oh, it's all we're waiting for the government, waiting for the government."
Really interesting to get your take. Thanks very much, Sadia. Thanks. Now we're talking Northern Lights. They were around last night. They were also around on Tuesday night, but apparently much stronger in the UK last night. If you've got pictures, we want to see them. Send us to it.
It's going to be hard to beat this one, though.
Yeah.
Sadly, this one, honestly, it almost looks like it was done by AI. It's so perfect. This is Whitley Bay, and it was Tuesday night, I believe. Clear skies offering
gorgeous,
a particularly fantastic view there of the Northern Lights.
Absolutely beautiful. Now, we just wanted to end the programme today on a story we've been talking about all week, and that's the story of a girl called Nanita and the failings of Britain's care system, because 2 weeks after her 18th birthday, so that's the moment she legally became an adult and it kind of left the care system, if you like, Nanita took her own life after obvious warning signs were ignored. It's an awful story. Early in the week, we spoke to Lemon Sissay, who is an author, he's a poet, he's a broadcaster. He also spent 18 years in care. And he spoke about the emotions Nanita would have been feeling after being left on her own.
Imagine being 18 years of age and then being told you're never going to see your family, the rest of your family, ever again. They're not going to be in touch with you. You're not their responsibility anymore. That's what happens to this child in care. Yeah. All memory of what happened, who she was in contact with people that she cared for and cared for her previously was lost. They were not to be in touch with her.
Well, that was with us earlier this week, and Cisse then wrote a poem about Nonita and posted it on his social media alongside this picture of a butterfly that was painted by Nonita herself. And the poem is as follows. Lay her down by the singing tree and sing her a lullaby. Tell her the way to the sun will be the weight of a butterfly.
And I just want to pause on that picture for a moment, because one of the things that slightly broke my heart about this story was that our correspondent, Nick Martin, who's done some amazing work on this, said it was a hard story to do because he couldn't find a picture of Nonita, which blows your mind if you're a parent and think about the number of pictures you take of your own children. Not a single picture of Nonita. And that's why we wanted to show you this image that she did, and it is, I guess, a picture that Nonita created when there were no others.
It was very moving, this, earlier in the week when we were covering it, and this kind of brought it all home again. You know, as we end off this week, I think it's really what sticks with us. It was amazing to have Lem in here, but you know, really, also just kudos to Nick and his team for the reporting. I think it was very important and really significant.
Yeah, I know a lot of you will be affected by this as well. So I just wanted to we wanted to bring you that reminder that you can contact the Samaritans on 116 123 or joe@samaritans.org.
Just as we wrap up the hour, well, the NHS data we mentioned earlier, we didn't have time to get Ashish back on, but he's going to be on in detail with Gareth after the break. But the headlines of the data: the waiting list for routine hospital treatment in England has fallen slightly after previously rising for 3 months in a row.
So that's 7.39 million treatments waiting to be carried out at the end of September, which is down slightly from the August figures. Thanks for being with us this week on Ridge and Frost. Lots more coming up, and we will see you on Monday.